Let's get peppy. Welcome to the big one, PEP 200. This is PEP or Planet Extra podcast. I am the host of Planet America on ABC Australia, but this is not an official podcast of the ABCs. Repeat, not an official podcast. But on PEP, we do cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. Any TV at all. If you're listening, you can find us on YouTube at the PEP with Chaz and Dr. Dave channel. You can also see highlights on the PEP Clips YouTube channel. You also find timestamps and show notes in our blurbs. And if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we are likely to see it. You can also tweet us or blue sky us at PEPCaSDRDAVE. That's at Pep Chaz. Dr. Dave, if you want to chat to some fellow peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen right now or in the blurb of the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lackey privately, why not email us? The address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. The address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. But for now, let's turn to the man. Well, one of many men, but the best of them, in my view, who never raises the stakes on inconsequential views. I'm talking, of course, about the one, the only, certainly the only one that matters, Bill Wyman. There is only one Bill Wyman as far as I'm concerned, and he is on this podcast right now. Hello, Bill.
I am doing just great, Chaz. It's so good to see you.
Bill, can you please refresh your details, what you do, where people can find you?
Of course. I'm a longtime American journalist. I worked at Salon.com, which was that pioneering internet magazine. I was the arts and media editor. And then at National Public Radio, I was the arts and tech and media editor there and assistant managing editor, which was very fun in Washington. And I moved to Sydney a few years ago. I've been writing for the Sydney Morning Herald and teaching at the University of Sydney, where I lecture in beginning journalism and help out on the ABC whenever I can. And I didn't know if I got this right, Chaz. Is this an official ABC podcast?
I believe it's not an official ABC podcast, but thank you for clarifying. That is something that gets people confused sometimes, Bill. So it's good to get that settled. Now, Bill has been very kind here because we were actually meant to record this yesterday with Richard Cook, but Richie is currently in traction. Our hearts and minds go out to poor old Richie, who's got a bit of a back problem. So good luck, Rich.
I don't know if you know, but Richie is just like, I know you know he's a great person, but I don't know if you know this, but I think I met him my first day in Sydney, or maybe the second day. And he's just been such a great friend, and I think he introduced us. So the chance to be on the podcast with him would have been so great. In fact, I think what I said to him one day, we were talking, I said, we should do a podcast. And he goes, oh, no, my buddy Chaz has a podcast. And so he introduced us. So that's how much I have to thank Richard for.
Thank you, Richie, for reducing my competition. I appreciate
Oh, no, but I mean, I'm just very happy that.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And get better, Rich. And we'll try and get you and Rich on together at another time, Bill. We'll try and make it happen eventually. But the net result of this is Richie was in and he was out, then he was in and he was out, and now he's in the hospital. And and as a result of that, my preparation is all over the place because I tried to fill in for what the things that Richie was going to talk about. One of them was crypto, which everyone knows I hate talking about, and I spent a long time preparing it. And then Trump went and screwed us over by changing his policy at the last second. So I'm going to try and go by the seat of my pants here when we get to that, but. We're a bit all over the place. This is not usual. Like, there's stuff I didn't get a chance to do properly and so on. So I apologize in advance. But Bill, he has been dicked around for the last 24 hours over and over again. So thank you very much for making yourself available, Bill, at this late hour. First of all, Bill, what are you grateful for?
That is such a great question. And I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I had a grandiose one. But I'll tell you, this is just sort of a minor personal thing because I don't know if you know this, but Dr. Dave and Minglu are in Chicago.
I do know that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they just left today, maybe. But anyway, so they post things occasionally, and I lived in Chicago for a while. And I got to tell you, I am very grateful to have lived in Chicago, which might be the single greatest American city. Fabulous place, a very serious place, has great architecture, great theater, great journalism, great museums, great people. Believe it or not, even the Chicago police have a lot of problems, believe me. But everyone in Chicago is very professional in a weird way and does their jobs in a weird way that isn't true in many American cities. And it's not quite 100% true, but I always say I never had a bad day in Chicago. I got to work at a newspaper. I had a column. I had a radio show. And it was just a wonderful, great city. I experienced a lot of theater, obviously a lot of great music. And, I got to work at the Chicago Reader and the Chicago Tribune and do a little public radio work as well. So I miss it to this day. And anyone who has a chance should go visit Chicago because it could be the great American city.
Very well said. I'm grateful for USAID Acting Assistant Administrator Nicholas Enrich. And the reason I'm grateful to him, you probably haven't heard of him. You're probably never going to hear of him after this. But we spoke last week about USAID and their freeze. And in particular, we spoke about the extremely dubious things that DOJ was up to with regards to USAID. I'm talking about in PEP 199, we discussed this. They've been freezing individual payments to life-saving programs like AIDS drug providers, a number of deadly disease providers, actually, or drug providers, over the head of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio specifically said we are not going to. He got rid of the freeze on life-saving programs. And they kept the freeze up without him realizing. They were individually cancelling payments to frustrate what he was trying to do. I don't know. We don't know who instructed them to do it, whether it was Elon Musk or whether it was someone else, or whether they're doing it off their own bat. But whatever it was, what they were doing was kind of wrong. It's kind of one of the Peppers said, "Is that kind of like a coup?" In a little way, it kind of is. They're certainly taking power that's not theirs. Well, someone on the inside was writing memos detailing just how much things were going wrong. And that someone was Nicholas Enrich. His first memo described the staff reductions in programs that weren't supposed to have staff reductions. He detailed how there were meant to be 783 positions in these programs, and there were actually 69 because the rest were cut in a way they weren't meant to be cut. In his second memo, he noted that 72 different USAID activities had no funding, and they were meant to have funding, leading to a death toll that was, quote, not known. He was halfway through writing his third memo when he got sacked. They finally caught up with him. His third memo was estimating how many people will die or get deadly diseases as a result of the cuts, the body count, so to speak. Now, his memo noted that a permanent halt of $7.7 billion in aid could lead to 12.5 to 17.9 million cases of malaria, with an additional 71 to 166,000 deaths annually, and a 28 to 32% increase in tuberculosis globally, and an additional 200,000 paralytic polio cases a year, and in a worst-case scenario, potentially 28,000 cases of Ebola, Marburg, or related diseases. Potentially 17 million pregnant women would lose access to life-saving services, more than 11 million newborns would go without postnatal care, and about 1 million children would not receive treatment for severe acute malnutrition. These are all fairly important numbers, and because he was putting them together, he got the sack. And he totally knew he was going to get the sack. He very openly told people that he was just going to keep on going until he did get the sack, because he felt that people needed to know this information. That's exactly the kind of person who it is sad to see be lost from the public service, but I am grateful to Nicholas Enrich, I wish I knew how to pronounce it. He deserves a correct pronunciation, and I just want to give him credit because I'm not sure how else he's going to get it. Okay, so now on to the correspondence. This is the first bit I just couldn't get together because I was too busy trying to whip up whatever Richie was meant to be doing at the last second. I always leave correspondence till last. Though it does seem appropriate that PEP 200 would be totally chaotic. and totally filled with me apologizing for my lack of preparation, because that is what the first 199 episodes has been like. There is one correspondence, though, I had ready, and that is from Steve. Steve asks, how long exactly is Trump going to leave that Gulf of America map standing in the middle of the Oval Office? It's still there, he notes, and he shows proof. It's right. Steve's links us to this photo from earlier this week. Have a look at that. There you can see it. Just in the background there, you can see the Gulf of America map. It's right in the middle of the thoroughfare. It's getting in people's way. He loves the Gulf of America so much. I have no proof of this, but I suspect that is Trump's actual favorite action of his entire term. Forget immigration, forget everything else. I think the Gulf of America is his absolute pet action of his own. He seems to love it so much. But that's one correspondence. I'm sure you don't have anything to say about Gulf of America. Do you have anything to say about Gulf of America, Bill?
It's just incredibly silly, and like so many of his things, it's sort of amusing and sort of performative. Yeah. And at the same time, it's just so damaging and so counterproductive, so beside the point. Just 1/100th of the energy devoted to that in the White House that had been devoted to doing something positive in Mexico in terms of drugs or improving the middle class or enforcing the rule of law or helping the rule of law there would make a significant difference. And instead, they're just dancing around like that for, just to be blunt, the yahoos and the sort of trolls in their coalition. So it's it's funny, but it's sad.
Fair enough. Although I do think you've really dropped the ball there when you say they could be doing something to help Mexico. Last I saw, to help Mexico, they were trying to pass tariffs. That was the justification, wasn't it? to crack down on all the drugs and migrants in Mexico. Yeah, sure. We won't be talking about that today because that was one of the things that they reversed as soon as they started. But I'm sure Dave will want to talk about that next week.
Another silly development today. Yeah.
Yes. Let's get into. There's a correspondence for you, Bill. There's a correspondence for you personally from Ben. This is Bill correspondence. Okay. Ben basically points out in PEP 186, just before the election, we were discussing predictions and so forth, and you didn't make a prediction, which is I like people who don't just blurt out predictions, but just willy-nilly just because people expect it if they don't actually have necessary prediction. You didn't make a prediction, but you did list 11 to 12 favourable conditions for the Harris campaign. And he rails through them quickly. I might as well read these out. You noted the Democrats had a superior ground game. They had more fundraising. Trump had lost the popular vote twice. There was a gender gap where more women were supporting Biden in the polls than men were supporting Trump. His final week strategy was doubling down the base. The Harris strategy was turning the base out, but also turning out Trump haters and turning out the middle. You talked about the shift in likely voters to Democrats recently. It was easier to vote than it used to be. The African American voters would be coming home. There was a Tom Bradley effect. There was no dissension in the campaign. It was a very well disciplined campaign, the Harris campaign. The economy was doing okay. Inflation was down. Unemployment was down. Crime was down. And foreign policy wasn't a big issue, so it would limit the negative impact of the Palestine. Israel-Gaza thing. So Ben asks, given all that, looking back now, Trump won. What's your view on why he won and why the Democrats lost despite all that? And did we learn anything from that election that will help us analyze and predict future elections?
Yes, this is such a great question. And of course, I think you could feel the entire, intelligentsia politicariat just incredibly shocked right the day after the election. And the number one thing, obviously, what happened is that the Trump campaign got people out in a way that nobody expected. Right, they got an enormous amount of people, just as Biden got an enormous amount of people out to throw Trump out 4 years ago. So that's based. That's the reductive thing. He got more votes out, but it was an extraordinary amount of votes. And another one of the things is that I don't know if I said this, but another one of the things is that Trump got out an enormous number of I don't want to be condescending or anything, but non-traditional voters, right, in 2016, and then he got some more out in 2020, and then the question was, Jesus Lord, is there any more out there? But of course he did that, and then the untraditional voters, and then there are other thing, obviously the well chronicled swings of blacks and Hispanics, particularly males. So that was pretty interesting, and that I think obviously more than compensated for the split in female voters. And then, and there's one interesting thing about that I think I've said this on the podcast before, that the thing about Black and Hispanic voters is actually good, because what happens is you have these immigrants, they grow up, they have kids, those kids can grow up and they probably drive their parents crazy because they're wearing American clothes and they're doing this and they're doing that and they're feeling their oats and they're assimilating themselves into society. Those people grow up, have kids, 20 years go by, and those kids are voting. Okay. So obviously that's happened just in my adult lifetime. And part of it's been places like Arizona, for example, where there's a lot of Hispanics. And what's so interesting about it is that third generation is not really Hispanic anymore. It's just completely, fully assimilated. And blacks are different because blacks have obviously always been in America, but there has been enormous inroads of the blacks into the middle class and stuff like that in the past 40 or 50 years. So one of the interesting things about it, which is good, is that, hey, blacks and Hispanics have a total right to be completely off the rails, out where the train don't run, politically awful in a way that would have them voting for someone like Trump, which traditionally they wouldn't. So that's good. And when I did go down those lists, what I think I was framing it to is just when you look at fundamentals in American politics, you have this thing, the more optimistic candidate tends to win, the lack of Sturm and Drang tends to be an advantage and stuff like that. And I thought those were all I think the way I framed it is, are we missing something here? I mean, is this really a close race given all these things? Obviously, we were missing something there. So, yeah.
I find that very interesting, what you were just saying about the third generation and also with black voters as well. I mean, I tend to share what you just said there, where I feel like the closer a particular identity group is to 50%, 50-50 in an election, the happier I am, because it means that that's no longer an issue on its own. It means that something needs to be going right with the treatment of that identity group, that they're not united on one side. If they were united on one side, that's a sign that things are going wrong. And one of the parties is favouring them and the other party is discriminating against them in some capacity. And so the closer it gets to 50-50, I'm not saying everyone's got to be 50-50, but I'm saying I feel a lot happier when I see 60-40 from an identity group than I do 80-20. 80-20 tells me something's going wrong. Whereas 60-40 means, yeah, sure, you get demographics going one way or another, that's fine, but we at least must be approaching some kind of vague equality with that identity group if they're not split along political lines. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say it isn't achieving equality, but that you do have some segment of it. And of course, economics in the end is going to trump a lot of stuff. And that a lot of these African American kids are growing up now and not experiencing any of the grotesque violations that their parents saw, and to some extent, it's not good because it's them saying, "Hey, I don't care about the millions of African American kids who are getting prejudiced against, who aren't getting home loans, who are stuck in cities in the South where, in all sorts of different ways, they're being taken advantage of and persecuted." So it's unfortunate. But on the other hand, something we should all be cared about. It's not just a racial thing. It's not, you don't care about blacks being disadvantaged just because you're black. And I'm putting it in a much more cold way, which is like, hey, black people and Hispanic people have a right to be cold-hearted, selfish, unthinking of people less advantage to themselves, just like a lot of Republicans are right now. So I guess that's good. I'm saying the same thing you are, but in a much more cynical way.
Yes. Yeah. Look, we've both got our own way of expressing our thoughts. And just to be clear, That's not me saying, oh, okay, racism's over, let's go home. That's not me saying that at all. What I'm saying is that 60-40 makes me happier than 80-20. That's what that's what I'm saying. And that doesn't mean the problems are gone. It just means there's probably fewer problems when you're at 60-40 than when you're at 80-20 or when you're at 90-10. Like anyway, that's just something I'm just positing off the top of my head. Maybe if I go home and think about it, I'm sure the Peppers will let me know if that's a stupid thing to say. Let's get into the main content. Now, the main topic this week, obviously, early on was Ukraine. So let's get into that. Now, I'd like to break this up into 3 sections, if you don't mind, Bill. The first of which is, I think there's a lot of background to talk about with this issue. Then the meeting itself with Trump, and then what this means. So I'll just start with the background, and then we can discuss that, and we'll have a bit of give and take on that before we move into the actual meeting. They've been arguing about a minerals deal forever. Not forever, for like a year. They've been discussing the minerals deal. Zelensky actually proposed it, well, at least in late 2024 was when he proposed it. This is September. It was after Zelensky visited a Scranton ammunition plant in the middle of the election campaign, September 22 it was, and he thanked the workers for producing munitions for Ukraine. This is what J.D. Vance was referring to in his meeting just now as campaigning for the opposition in October. Zelensky met Josh Shapiro. It wasn't meant to be a campaign event at all. Shapiro wasn't part of the Democratic ticket. Zelensky wanted to also meet with Trump while on that trip, but Trump refused. But it may have been a mistake for him to go to meet Shapiro anyway, because Republicans took it as a political statement. They got quite pissed off. Vance is still talking about it. Republicans saw it as Zelensky striking back because Trump had said a few pro-Russian things recently. So anyway, then he came back on September 26th, just 4 days later, to make up for it. And he met both Harris and Trump. And as a bit of an olive branch to Trump, he pitched this minerals deal then. I think it was his idea. It might have been Lindsey Graham's idea, because Lindsey Graham's been talking about the Ukraine's $1 trillion in minerals forever. I have no idea where that figure came from. So then we finally got the deal about 2 weeks ago. And the original deal 2 weeks ago was ridiculous. We were talking about 50% of all mineral resources, oil and gas resources, ports and other infrastructure, as agreed, going to America. And 50% of the financial value of all new licensees issued to third parties for the future monetization of resources in Ukraine going to America. America essentially owning half of Ukraine. America would get that 50% first before anyone else got their value. In the words of one participant, that clause means pay us first and then feed your children. And how long was that arrangement to last? America would keep it going until they'd been paid $500 billion plus $2 for every dollar of military aid that Ukraine received from then on. Bearing in mind, America's only given $180 billion worth so far, and they didn't give it to Ukraine anyway. $120 billion went to the Defense Department to help Ukraine. So they would have been paying this off forever. This would have gone on forever. It was literally harsher than the Treaty of Versailles. Literally. So that was the old deal. The new deal is nothing like that. If anything, it's the opposite. This was negotiated by Keith Kellogg, who is the one member of the Trump administration who's really super pro-Ukraine. Like his daughter is involved in a Ukraine charity. Like she runs a Ukraine charity. He is the Ukraine-Russian envoy for Trump, strong supporter of Ukraine, and he's the one who negotiated the new deal. And America gets basically nothing out of this new deal. It's just the direct opposite, like it should be, to be honest. Firstly, like I said on Planet America, rare earth minerals aren't worth nearly as much as Trump thinks they are. The entire world supply is worth $15 billion a year. In fact, mining companies in America abandoned rare earth minerals in the 1990s because the profit margins weren't high enough for them then. They're worth more now, but not that much more. They just don't make that much money. And Ukraine is supposed to have a fifth of the world's supply. Maybe they don't. We'll get to that. So it's like $3 billion a year. That's what they got. Ukraine probably has the largest lithium base in Europe, but lithium prices have crashed by 88% since 2022. I've got a graph for that. You can see right there, it's not looking too good, the price of lithium these days. So, yeah, you heard what Bill had to say. It's like a seventh of what it used to be, the price of lithium. Ukraine has cobalt as well, but most EV batteries don't use cobalt anymore. So what's the point of cobalt? They use lithium ferrous phosphate now. Also, sodium-ion, sulfur-based batteries limit the future demand growth for lithium anyway. So these rare earth minerals, so these kinds of minerals that we associate with this kind of mining, they're not as effective, they're not as valuable as you might think. Ukraine does have germanium and gallium, which are both useful for the production of high-performance chips. There's computer chips I'm talking about, not Smith's Crips. And the US doesn't have gallium. It doesn't have much germanium. So that's good to get their hands on that, but it's still not worth trillions of dollars. It's just handy, that's all. We should also note something important. All those assessments I just described are based on Soviet figures from 30 to 60 years ago with old technology. So we just don't know how accurate they are. They might have more. They might have less. We just don't know. Also, it's worth noting that about 50% of Ukraine's minerals, according to Ukrainian think tanks, are in Russian-occupied territory, which is an important point to consider if you're going to make these kinds of deals. No profits as well are going to be realized until someone mines these things. Right now, there are no mines. This is just substances somewhere underground. It takes about 18 years on average to develop a mine. So that is some time before anyone's making money, which takes us to the deal. It's not even a deal. It's a deal to write a deal. Okay, so in the deal, there's lots of conditions about how they're going to write the deal. And there are a few limitations, but not much detail, to be honest. America, at least in the deal so far, is owed pretty much nothing. They still have the 50% figure there, but what the 50% figure now means is deposits of minerals, hydrocarbons, oil, natural gas, and other extractable materials and other infrastructure relevant to national resource assets as agreed by both participants. And it's not going to America, it's going to an investment fund in Ukraine. And that investment fund is going to, quote, invest in projects in Ukraine and attract investments to increase the development, processing and monetization of all public and private Ukrainian assets. So the money's all going to Ukraine, right? It's going to be jointly owned, the fund, by America and Ukraine in proportions that are yet to be determined, and jointly managed by Ukraine and America. But there's nothing in the deal that suggests America will make a cent out of it. It doesn't say anything about profit sharing. It doesn't say anything about like equity going to America. It doesn't say anything like that at all. Maybe they will. Maybe in the deal that they form down the track, America might get something out of it. Right now, they're not. It's not, at least not clear. Even the money made by the fund's investments is going straight back into the fund. Okay? America gets to contribute more to the fund, though. It specifically says America can give more money. It says the government of the United States of America will maintain a long-term financial commitment to the development of a stable and economically prosperous Ukraine. Further contributions may be comprised of funds, financial instruments, and other tangible and intangible assets critical for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Thank you, America. Now, this is so not what Trump describes when he talks about this deal. I wonder if he even knows what's in the deal. I wonder if Keith Kellogg has written the deal on the sly and Trump has no idea and doesn't care as long as he can sell it, because that's what he likes to do. He just likes to sell. He doesn't care about the reality. So maybe that's what's happening here. I don't know. But this is a very pro-Ukraine deal. So they made that deal a week ago. And a US official said that Kellogg and Zelensky had agreed with one item still to be finalized. We didn't know what that item was. I'm guessing it probably involves security guarantees because that's all Zelensky wants to talk about. But maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Either way, Keith Kellogg wanted the deal signed right then and there. Mr. Ukraine wanted to sign the deal a week ago. Zelensky and the Ukrainian government insisted on having a signing ceremony in America. Kellogg advised them against it. He said, knowing the relationship between the presidents, it needed to be strengthened before meeting in person. That's what he said. Keith Kellogg has Zelensky's best interests at heart. You should listen to Keith Kellogg. But anyway, Zelensky insisted on the signing ceremony, and there's an open question as to why that was. I have a theory, which I'll get to in a second. Do you have any comments to make so far on the mineral deal?
An amazing story, because some of this I've been sort of following, but not in this wonderful detail. This is fascinating.
Cool. Okay. At this point in time, we should talk about security guarantees because they are very important and the background of security guarantees. Ukraine has maintained for months it will not agree to any peace deal without security guarantees. But Zelensky says the reason for that is because peace isn't just not having a war, it's being able to live well without being oppressed. He likes to quote Ronald Reagan whenever he says this. He did it on the Fox News interview directly after the blow up in the White House.
I don't remember exactly, but President Reagan said that peace is not just an absent the war. Yes, we're speaking about just and lasting peace, about freedom, about justice, about human rights.
And Zelensky also points out that Putin has violated ceasefire agreements 25 times with Ukraine in the last 15 years, and that he's never been forced to concede an inch of land after he does. So what's the point, Zelensky says, of making another agreement if Putin's just going to violate it again unless you guarantee he won't violate the agreement? Hence, security guarantees. And Zelensky is of the view that only America can make those security guarantees because Europe's not strong enough. To be clear, Putin has actually honoured negotiations before. He's honoured prisoner exchange programs frequently with both America and Ukraine. So it's not like he's impossible to negotiate with, but I personally believe Zelensky is right about the land grabs. Putin he just thinks he owns Ukraine and he's happy to take whatever he likes from Ukraine and he ain't giving it back. So I think it's a fair point that Zelensky makes about security guarantees. Trump's point of view, though, is that Putin violated ceasefires with presidents he didn't respect, and Trump is different. His point of view is that he's spoken to Putin and he's sure that Putin will not be invading again. I have to say I find Trump's point of view unconvincing because for a few reasons. Number one, if Trump's so sure that Russia won't invade again, then why not give security guarantees? They cost nothing if they're unnecessary. And even if Trump is right, of course security guarantees aren't just for now or for Trump. They're also for 15 years' time when there's two completely different presidents in charge. The whole point of a security guarantee is to bind a country to look after another country for the future when the personalities have changed. That's the whole point.
And, if I can say something here, there's a thing that just makes certain people's heads explode about the era we're living in. And man, I'm one of those people, and this is a good example of it because we're this thing happened, and then there's another level, and now we're kind of down 4 levels down, discussing little things over here. And the big picture is this isn't like Israel and Gaza, and it's not like so many of the other conflicts in the world where there's actually two sometimes intractable or just incredibly difficult to untangle for whatever reason controversies or conflicts, right? This is a very, very black and white conflict. I mean, it's hard to think in a really long time, literally going back to the Second World War, where there's nothing to America's position is there's nothing to negotiate. You know, Ukraine was something like an ally. Russia already had taken Crimea, which we shouldn't let them get away with in the first place. And now this is completely unprovoked. And there is, the America's position is there should be no discussion. We'll discuss when Russia goes back to Russia. And it's actually great I shouldn't say great, but Russia is obviously overextended. They can never actually win the war if the West just remains united. It might cost a little bit of money. And as you say, these security guarantees, not only do they not cost money, you guarantee you don't have to spend the money lately because you're just making it clear that it's not going to stand. And it's just so funny when I hear you and other people discuss, well, Trump believes in this, and there's really only two things going on in Trump's mind. Either he's completely out to lunch and is actually play acting this all in his head and just wants to come up with a deal and actually doesn't have any, moral skin in the game at all. Or, which I think is a lot likely, there's actually other things going on, and he's actually, well, it's not even actually, he patently is on Russia's side in a lot of this, and he's just maneuvering a way to give them as much as possible, which is just one of those things you can't believe you're even saying, right? This is why certain people, there is this thing called Trump derangement syndrome, and this is a perfect example, because why are we even discussing that? There's no discussing. They're our ally. Russia cannot go around invading people. They're an enemy of the United States. And not only that, they're a puny enemy of the United States. People keep forgetting this is a country that has a marginal economy, and particularly with the price of oil these days, is financially strapped as well, and we should be increasing the pressure on them rather than relieving it, which is another outrageous thing. So I just wanted to, sometimes you feel a need that you want to claw back the moral center of the discussion. So that's all I want to say.
No, I think that's really important to say. I'm glad you said it, because I do get lost in the details. It is absolutely true. And look, I'm certainly going to get to the 2 points that you raised there, the two alternatives. Either Trump is indifferent and doesn't give a stuff at all, just wants to get his inverted commas Nobel Peace Prize and doesn't care about either country, or Trump is just overtly pro-Russian for whatever reason. And we will discuss that as the alternatives coming up. But I was going to say, there is a third argument with the security guarantees, and there's a reason I'm obsessing about security guarantees, because I think it's central, security guarantees, to what happens in the meeting, why it goes wrong, what happened, what was going on in people's heads. Right? The third school on security guarantees is that it is what the administration has been pushing, the actual staffers rather than Trump, that the economic agreement is a security guarantee. There's a particularly bad version of that argument made by J.D. Vance 2 days ago, which I'll play.
If you want real security guarantees, if you want to actually ensure that Vladimir Putin does not invade Ukraine again, the very best security guarantee is to give Americans economic upside in the future of Ukraine. That is a way better security guarantee than 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. The security guarantee and also the economic guarantee for Ukraine is to rebuild the country and ensure that America has a long-term interest.
Bill, you clearly haven't seen that grab before from Norwegian.
I was just savoring that random country line.
Yeah, exactly. That was the moment. The moment he said that, that was the moment that the UK and France got a bit pissed off. They were not very impressed with that, because they are the two countries, the only two countries who have volunteered publicly to put boots on the ground. And uncharitable people would suggest they were the countries that J.D. Vance was referring to. Now, J.D. Vance, oh, by the way, also, those two countries have spent the last 30 to 40 years providing troops for America's wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, so forth. Vance says he didn't mean those countries. He says, he said, I didn't even say their names. Yeah, sure. Whatever. Here is a better version of the argument that's not smug and dismissive from Marco Rubio.
You also understand that this agreement that was supposed to be signed today was supposed to be an agreement that binds America economically to Ukraine, which to me, as I've explained, and I think the president alluded to today, is a security guarantee in its own way, because we're involved. It's now us. It's our interests.
What do you think, Bill? Do you agree with Marco Rubio? Is the economic deal a security guarantee?
Again, we're just talking about Rubio is a little smarter than J.D. Vance, obviously, but these are people who are sitting around they're so used to spinning out these specious arguments on Twitter for the last 5 to 10 years that they, when you actually see these bloviating suits on TV saying these things, it just seems so much more ridiculous. And particularly that sort of imperious, or the faux imperious poise that J.D. Vance affects, right? So again, it's just truly specious, and America has always based its foreign policy on strength, right? That's the whole Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher thing. And to see these kind of quizzling little sophists twist and turn ways to try to come up with a way to not do, to be weak, and then but to spin it in some way that to make it seem like it would be effective. Because obviously, for any number of reasons, a country could walk away from those things, particularly as you say, if the rights aren't even worth that much in the first place. So it's just weird, and it's just this sort of ongoing speciousness, as I say, that it doesn't seem to be a game because they are on message. They have the typical people in the White House who are spitting out these messages, but they're even more preposterous than they tend to be in, particularly Republican administrations. I mean, Democratic administrations are specious in their own way, but particularly since Reagan, I think the Republican ones have been particularly kind of unconvincing.
Yeah, look, I find the argument unconvincing as well. I mean, there's no what would actually happen. Obviously, if there was if Russia invaded, and America had a few mines there, the miners would just leave. Like, they're not going to fight a war because there's a couple of miners there. So that's not. I don't think it's a guarantee at all. And if you don't believe me, just listen to the private businesses who aren't buying that line at all.
The hope is that there would be security guarantee, but I can tell you that the private sector feels a little bit differently, is without intentional, explicit agreements about long-term security. The electoral cycle is only 4 years long. It takes 18 years to develop a mine, and on average globally, and then the mine can run for another 30 to 80 years. So we're talking about a period that is much longer than the security guarantee of one United States president. And that's where an explicit written guarantee is more valuable than the implicit guarantee.
Also, there is important context here that people have to understand that I think sheds light on Bill's argument that he's just been making about, let's just look at the context here. In 1994, Ukraine had 1,900 nukes, the third most nukes on Earth. It was because it was left over from the Soviet Union, and they gave them up in return for security assurances from Britain, the US, and Russia. Not guarantees, assurances. So they're different. And you can see what's happened since, right? None of what's happened since would have happened had Ukraine kept their nukes. Russia wouldn't have been messing around with them if they had 1,900 nukes. We actually talked to Stephen Pfeiffer yesterday on Planet America. We played it on the Friday show as well. He was one of the lead negotiators for the Budapest Memorandum, which was the peace agreement at the time. I expect a lot of people watching this will have seen this on Planet America, but I'll read the quote of what he said to us because it's very relevant.
It's interesting. I mean, the Budapest Memorandum did not specifically commit the United States and Britain to go to war against Russia if Russia violated the agreement. But when we were negotiating that language, the Ukrainians said, what will you Americans do if the Russians do violate the agreement? And we said, look, we will take an interest. We will do things. We said, we're not going to, we're telling you now, it will not include American military force. And that's why it was the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances, not guarantees, because to American ears, guarantees is what NATO has. It's what Australia, Japan, South Korea have. Now, probably the mistake was we didn't have a conversation 30 years ago about what exactly the United States would do. And that's because we, and I say here, we collectively, Americans and Ukrainians, we didn't foresee in 1993 and 1994 what Putin did in 2014 or in 2022. Had the Ukrainians seen that as a serious possibility, we probably would not have been able to get an agreement, and there would have been a much harder push by the Ukrainians to keep those nuclear weapons. Now, in 2014, I was critical of the Obama administration because I thought they should have done more consistent with what we had told the Ukrainians 20 years ago. I think the Biden administration, the kind of aid it provided, $100 billion in military and financial assistance, that was exactly what at least I had in mind back in 1993, 1994, though I wish the Biden administration had done more.
So assurances covered what Biden did, and that wasn't good enough to stop a Russian invasion. Obama did much less. So you can see why Ukraine will not settle for anything short of a guarantee. It makes perfect sense. I agree with them. They're right. Without a guarantee, Putin is likely to roll over them at some point in time in the future. At the very least, they need guarantees for a decade, in my view, because you can bet your life in 10 years' time after this, Ukraine's going to have nukes. They are actually one of the leading military tech countries in the world. Like 90%, literally 90% of their drone kills right now are from Ukraine-made drones. They are killing it at the moment, quite literally. They also have some serious science facilities there as well. And of course, they had their own nukes for years, so they know exactly how to remake them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ukraine does actually end up, if Ukraine ends up in Europe, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't end up rearming the whole continent, because they're going to be churning out so much defense material over the next decade or so. Anyway, the Ukrainian people are not on board at all with this peace process so far, in the slightest. I saw a poll the other day from last week. 16% want Ukraine to continue fighting flat out, but they say, flat out. 39% say Ukraine should continue fighting, but consider negotiating if military progress stalls. 39% say Ukraine should seek to negotiate an ending to the war as soon as possible. So it's only 39% who think negotiations should come first at this point in time. 20% said the US-Russian talks are legitimate. 20%. 32% don't know. 48% said not legitimate at all. So it's pretty bloody important for Zelensky to deliver here, or the Ukrainians are going to turn on him fast. Remember, they have a history of turning on their leaders when they don't like what they're doing. And what the Ukrainian people want are security guarantees. Zelensky was extremely clear about this on Fox News directly after the blow-up.
This is so sensitive. You know, just a ceasefire without security guarantees, this is so sensitive for our people. I'm speaking like a president of a people who are in this struggle 3 years, and they just want to hear that America on our side and that America will stay with us, not with Russians, with us. It's not my question, Brad. This is the question from all our people. I respect my soldiers and our people, our civilians who work and support our warriors. I can't say just stop. Nobody will stop, because everybody afraid that Putin will come back tomorrow. We want just and lasting peace. It's true. We want security guarantees.
So as Zelensky says, if he tells the Ukrainian people to stop fighting without security guarantees, they will ignore him. That's where he's at. That's the background for why everything is revolving around security guarantees. That is the one point of super disagreement between Zelensky and especially his people and Trump.
Can I make one other point?
Yeah.
Another thing I don't understand is that once in a while you hear an American politician, I think McCain is the guy who famously said Russia is a gas station with nukes. I think Barack Obama one time made a reference to they have a very small, that they're the size of Illinois or something like that. And I don't understand why people still talk about Putin like he is a big scare. They say, oh, he's a dictator and stuff like this. But I wonder why they don't demonize him more and say, look, this is a pretty small country compared to the economies of Europe, for example. It's a country that persecutes homosexuals vociferously. It's nationalistic and weird. It's completely incompetent. It's getting its butt kicked by this little small dowdy country in Europe. And, it's so poorly managed that they nearly blew up the big famous bridge to Crimea. They knocked out a lot of the Black Sea Fleet. They've completely put it back. And Russia has gotten to the point of scrabbling, poor souls out of prisons and basically shanghaiing people to fight in this ridiculous war that nobody supports. And the only way Putin's supporting themselves is through all this propaganda means and stuff like this. And also make the point that he's a complete kleptocrat as well, who lives in these $200 million residences and stuff like this, while a lot of Russians are eating snow and seeing their poor kids who got arrested for burglary sent to get shot at by brave Ukrainians. And I kind of don't understand why we don't demonize Russia more that way. People say, oh, he's a murderer and this, and he's really sort of an incompetent kleptocrat guy who's really gotten in way over his skis right now, and we should be taking advantage of it. But maybe there's ploy with that you don't want to hurt his masculinity too much. But I think that works, and I think it would. My sense in America is that there's still an impression that, oh, it's Russia, it's the Soviet Union, it's this serious adversary. And I think a lot of Americans, particularly in the right, don't quite get that how different the country is right now from the Soviet.
I think it's fair. It's definitely different. So now we get to the day before the meeting. And leading up to this, every press conference with Zelensky and Trump has been revolving around security guarantees issue. They're all asked about it. Everyone knows this is the conflict. I'll just read you what ABC News America, how they describe the situation. Kyiv is maneuvering to win a US security agreement as part of the proposed minerals deal, a preliminary framework of which Ukraine has been working on, but Trump said he would not offer any security guarantees to Ukraine beyond very much as part of any agreement. We're going to have Europe do that, he told reporters at the White House on Wednesday. In a video statement posted to the presidential website on Wednesday evening, Zelensky said his team is working to ensure that Ukrainian positions are protected under any circumstances, and this is one of the key conditions for the diplomacy we need, for the right diplomacy that will guarantee peace for Ukraine. The president said there was a lot of international work on Wednesday. Our teams are working with the United States. We are preparing for negotiations as early as this Friday. Trump said Wednesday that he expects to sign the minerals deal with Zelensky at the White House on Friday, adding that his administration is happy with the deal. So Zelensky said they were preparing for negotiations as early as this Friday, which was the day the economic agreement was due to be signed. So he sees them as separate. He sees the security guarantees negotiations as different to the economic deal, clearly from that. And the White House saw them as separate as well. This is what Brett Baer said to Zelensky directly after the blow-up.
I'm told that you were told multiple times from lawmakers on Capitol Hill and the White House to make today about the minerals deal and the economic deal, and then get it signed and let negotiations play out over security guarantees step by step.
Okay, so the White House also saw the security guarantees issue as separate from the economic deal. And Trump was happy to put it off because he just wants to get his deal signed and boast about it a lot, whatever. Then we get to the day of the meeting. Zelensky actually had a meeting directly before the meeting with it was a bipartisan meeting with these people here, Klobuchar, Jackie Rosen, Lindsey Graham, Richard Blumenthal, Roger Wicker, Charles Grassley, Chris Murphy, Peter Welsh, Sheldon Whitehouse, Chris Van Hollen, and Keith Kellogg. So there's Republicans and Democrats there, okay? And Republicans have been running with the line that the Democrats G'd Zelensky up to fight with Trump. That's bullshit. I'll tell you why in a second. But one of the reasons they said that was because Chris Murphy tweeted out that Zelensky confirmed that Ukrainian people will not support a fake peace agreement where Putin gets everything he wants and there are no security arrangements for Ukraine. Okay, now I think that's bullshit to say he's talking about the economic deal there, because he sees them as different for a start. It doesn't make sense he'd go to the signing to blow it up. Why would he do that? That doesn't make sense. Number one, he sees them as different, but also there were Republicans at that meeting. The Republicans aren't going to sit there and listen to Zelensky say he's going to blow up the meeting with Trump in 5 minutes. Lindsey Graham was there. This is what he said about the meeting.
I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait. I told Zelensky we'll talk about security guarantees. We'll talk about ceasefires and how the war ends. This is a process.
So he's saying we're going to talk about security guarantees. Don't take the bait. What's he mean by don't take the bait? I think the only way you can interpret that is don't take the bait from reporters asking you about it, because that's all they were doing at that point in time, asking about security guarantees. It's certainly not bait from Trump. Okay, so that is, bottom line, as far as I can see, going into the meeting, Zelensky's order of preference is 1, get security guarantee language bootstrapped into the economic deal. That would be great. 2, if not that, use this high publicity event and the goodwill from the economic deal to convince Trump to provide a security guarantee soon as part of the peace process. If you can't do that, 3, at least be seen by his people to be advocating for security guarantees as hard as he possibly can in a public setting, so to maybe lay the groundwork for them being forced to eat a shit sandwich in a few months by Trump. That to me seems like what Zelensky is thinking going into this meeting. Do you have anything to say before we get to the meeting, Bill?
No, it's just that the other funny thing about this, and I almost hate to keep bringing this up because I don't want to feel like I'm on MSNBC or something like that.
No, you're right. Go.
Like, it's just so funny. You think of it like, who is Zelensky negotiating with? It's like, who doesn't think that we should have these things? It's like he's going to America not to negotiate with America, but to kind of get the people around going, we really got to get the president to do this thing that we all know we should be doing. I mean, it's just, why is Lindsey Graham having to give him advice when Lindsey Graham is ostensibly on the side of the president? You know what I mean? It's just a little bit odd. It's like so much of what's going on in America reminds me of the old Twilight Zone episode. Is it no, it's not The Monsters Are Due. It's the one where the 6-year-old or the 8-year-old boy has this crazy power over everybody because he's a monster who can erase their faces and stuff like that. And, I mean, Lindsey Graham is a prominent Republican, from I think he's on the Foreign Affairs Committee, right? Mm. But why does he have to kind of give this advice to this American ally about how to get America on his side when they're all sort of negotiating around Trump, which is just kind of, and J.D. Vance, which is just crazy. I mean, you just think that he would come to America and, people like Graham and Trump would sit down with them and figure out what's best for America and the West. But that's just not what's happening.
I think I'll answer your question right now. I think the reason why they need to do this is not just because of Trump, but because Trump and in particular the MAGA people behind Trump as well have poisoned the well for Ukraine in America.
Right, but why? I mean, yes, they have. I mean, yes, that's obvious, and it's just crazy. I mean, it just goes back because the whole point that everything that started the whole, the first impeachment came from America trying to keep Ukraine on, to bring Ukraine fully into the community of nations, right? And so Trump has this irrational thing up his butt about it, and the MAGA people are just so dumb they don't have any consistency of thinking what's in America's best interest and stuff like this. And again, this is far more important to America than Kuwait, for example, or even Vietnam, if you think about it. I mean, this is on the edge of NATO, and it's something that's just so obviously punishing. It's just interesting to me that because of how they have poisoned the well, where everyone's kind of tangled up in knots.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's true. I think it's true. Just to finish off the thought, I mean, I know you agree with me, but if Trump and the people who led MAGA had been right on side with Ukraine from the beginning, I don't think the polling in America would be what it is now. Yeah, because of the positions they've taken in the past, the polling is now that you need to convince the American people why they should care about Ukraine. They're not convinced. And so right now, the populace is in a position where they can be easily demagogued against Ukraine. Now, Bill, we've only got you for another hour, which sounds like a long time, but in PEP, that's not long. So I'm just going to take time out. We'll cover the actual meeting because you know what happened in the meeting. I'll cover the actual meeting with Lockie, and then we'll cut back into you after that. We'll see you in just a little while. Okay, welcome to the studio after Bill is done. Now, this is PEP 200. We did have decorations planned and celebrations and all the rest of it. We're not going to pull them out now. We have these. Yay!
Happy 200!
Happy 200!
You did it, Jack.
That's wonderful. I've already broken it. That's great. That seems appropriate. I didn't realize at the beginning of this podcast, I said all the things that it seemed appropriate that we were chaotic and that I was apologizing for a lack of preparation.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was also appropriate that we would have the same audio levels as we had for the first 120 episodes of PEP.
Yeah, I thought that was a complete intentional move on my behalf. I thought you will take PEP back to its roots.
Yeah.
I apologize, everyone. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I feel like we're just taking them through the journey again. You have a bit of the shitty audio. Now we've got the good audio. And then we'll a bit more of the shitty audio again. This is just what happened because at the last second, Bill had to be in the house because Richie's in hospital. And maybe Richie has headphones in hospital.
I note that you haven't said Richie's in hospital without laughing.
Well, okay. Richard's in hospital. There we go.
No, I'm laughing.
Yeah. So anyway, like we're aware of the audio. Like he's done his best, but honestly, you should have heard what it was like when we finished recording.
It was bad. I'm sorry.
So anyway, so we're aware of it. Don't complain. We know it's crap. But next week we'll be back to normal.
Do complain, but send all complaints to linton.besser@abc.net.au.
I'm glad you said that. Not the right way round. That's not his actual email.
Oh, now they'll never know.
Let's go on to we'll talk about the actual meeting. Let's go through the actual meeting now, Lockie. Let's straighten up.
Yeah, hit me.
Okay, so we start at minute 2 of the meeting. This is during Trump's opening speech, and he says this.
We're going to sign the agreement at the conference in the East Room in a little while, right after lunch. And we'll be having lunch together. We're also discussing some other things.
Electric start.
Now, the reason I played that was not because it's exciting and dramatic. We know where the drama's coming. What I'm trying to do here is explain where it came from. We don't know what Trump means when he says discussing some other things. My guess is he's referring to the security guarantees issue, because remember, that's all anyone was talking about going into it. And it's clearly the big issue leading up to this conference. I think that was Trump delivering a subtle signal to Zelensky to leave it alone, saying that we'll be talking about other things afterwards. I think that's what he was referring to there. That's my guess. I might be wrong. Regardless, though, at the 3-minute mark, and don't worry, we're not going to go through every single minute, but I'm going to go through every bit which I feel is leading somewhere. Minute 3, Zelensky starts speaking. And note, J.D. Vance, that he starts by thanking Trump. And then he immediately moves to security guarantees.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you for invitation. And really, I hope that this first document, will be first step to real security guarantees for Ukraine, our people, our children. I really count on it. And of course, we count that America will not stop support. Really, for us, it's very important to support and to continue it. I want to discuss it with details further during our conversation, and of course, the infrastructure or security guarantees.
Did not take him long. Took him, 20 seconds, bang, security guarantees.
I think we hadn't hit minute 4. No.
Yeah. But like as soon as he started talking, he's straight into this, drilling into security guarantees, saying this deal will be the first step to real security guarantees for Ukraine, and he'll discuss it during their lunch conversation, he says. So that proves Zelensky sees the economic deal as separate from the security guarantees. He sees this as a step towards that guarantees. Now, that's important. And the reason I'm just going on and on about this is because I've already seen the comments from Planet America on Wednesday when I made an abridged version of the same point without all my evidence. And there were just heaps of people going that, like, this is just crap. There's no, like, he wasn't. The security guarantees thing you're obsessed with, Chaz. He does not think it's different from the deal. It's all the same thing. You are splitting hairs. I'm not splitting hairs. I'm just showing you the evidence that Zelensky is definitely seeing the security guarantees as different from this deal. And this becomes important because of what is coming up later. By the way, as an aside, I like the fact that you're giving out Linton Besser's fake email address at the same time as you're stuffing down KFC in the middle of what's not an official ABC podcast.
Wait till Linton hears how I paid for this KFC. Ooh. It's American. It's on theme.
Underneath that T-shirt, here's a KFC T-shirt, by the way. Okay, back to let's straighten up. Again, we're not even drunk. We're acting like we're drunk here. So they're not the same thing, security guarantees and the deal. Everyone's conflating them. But at minute 5, I know I'm doing every minute. Zelensky, surprise, Zelensky specifically acknowledges that Europe will give them security guarantees, which he knows is Trump's position, but he argues that Ukraine needs American guarantees as well.
I think that France and UK already spoke to you, And we know that Europe is ready, but without the United States, they will not be ready to be as strong as we need.
Okay, so he's put forth his position there. Okay, then we'll skip past it where Zelensky's showing Trump pictures of what Russia did to Ukrainian prisoners. Good luck trying to turn Trump against Putin. That was a valiant effort there from Zelensky. But Trump was very polite, just took it on board, said, yep, we'll get down to the deal, yeah? Okay, fine. So he's very polite, very diplomatic. Then we get to minute 7. First question of the presser. How does this economic deal help Ukraine's security? Very first question is about security guarantees. Trump
There's
only...
the bait that he was warned.
Exactly. Trump only talks about economic benefits, completely ignores the question, I'm sure deliberately. He falsely complains that Europe gave less money than them while doing so. So then the follow-up is to repeat the question, and then Trump gives the usual answer he's given until now.
Long-term security for Ukraine. How does this provide?
I think they're going to have great luck. I think once we make the agreement, that's going to be 95% of it. They're not going to go back to fighting. I've spoken with President Putin, and I feel very strong. I've known him for a long time, and I feel very strongly that they're very serious about it, and we'll make a deal. And when the deal is made, I don't think we talk about security. Everyone's talking about the other day, all they talked about was security. I said, let me make the deal first. I have to make the deal first. I don't worry about security right now. We have to have a deal, because right now, last week, 2,000 soldiers died on both sides. 2,000.
Okay, then minute 11, Zelensky gives his first answer, and he's disciplined. He's just about economic benefits. That's what the question was about. Not the question, sorry, that's what Trump was talking about.
Sure.
So
Zelensky sticks to it.
Yeah, so sticks to it.
Sure.
But then he smuggles in, remember I said Trump did a Europe drive-by about how they didn't give nearly as much as America did, even though they gave more. He smuggles in a spirited rebuttal of Trump's European drive-by, and interestingly, Trump, normally he doesn't like people contradicting him. He's happy to play along.
Oh.
He goes diplomatic.
And really, we can help Europe because Europe really helped. President Trump said that they made less support, but they are our friends and they are our very supportive partners. They really gave a lot, Mr. President.
They did.
Really, they did.
They gave a lot, but they gave much less.
No.
Much less.
No. No.
Don't argue with me.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
How good are these two?
They should have a podcast.
No. They're getting along really well. Trump is in full sales mode. The suggestion that Trump was trying to ambush him during this is bullshit. That's not an ambush. Like they're getting
or a
along.
trap? No.
Yeah, it's not a trap. Trump is trying to get this deal signed. I think there's no doubt about this. Then minute 13, Trump is trying to bemoan all the needless death, which is another line he likes to run, why he needs to end the war. And Zelensky slips in a little reminder that Russia started it.
Think of the parents, whether they're in Russia or Ukraine, think of the parents of all these people being killed needlessly.
They came to our territory.
Should have never started. If I were president, this would have never started.
So Zelensky slips in his own little elbowy little bit. That's the first time that someone hasn't been diplomatic during this, and it's Zelensky.
Interesting.
But Trump's reaction, he ignores it.
Yeah.
And just moves on. Once again, he's been diplomatic. At least so far, everything is going smoothly. Trump is trying to smooth over differences and just move on. Get the deal signed, get out of there. Collect his Nobel Peace Prize. At minute 14, they're asked about whether America is on Ukraine's side. Zelensky uses it to talk about security guarantees again. Trump again ignores it, just moves on.
Really, the most important question, can President Trump, I hope yes, with some other allies to stop Putin, withdraw these enemies, our enemy, withdraw these troops from our land? And I think that you asked about the history, I think that if President or when he will stop Putin, if President Trump will bring peace to our country, I think he will be on this wall.
We've had very, very good talks.
He's just dead batting at Trump.
Yeah, nothing.
And then at minute 20, Trump's asked about security guarantees again. This is so much about security guarantees. And he doesn't rule them out, but he gives his usual minimization of the issue.
Does that mean you provide security guarantees, Mr. President?
I don't want to talk about security yet because I want to get the deal done. You know, you fall into the same trap like everybody else. A million times you said over and over, I want to get the deal done. Security is so easy. That's about 2% of the problem. I'm not worried about security. I'm worried about getting the deal done. The security is the easy part. Security is very nice. Everybody stopped shooting. And now will Europe put people there? I know France is going to. I know the UK is going to. I know other countries are going to, and they happen to be right next door. We haven't committed, but we could conceivably. You know, we have security in a different form. We'll have workers there digging, taking the raw earth so that we can create a lot of great product in this country. So in that sense, you have something, but we haven't determined that yet. I will say, in speaking to France and in speaking to, and they were here, as you know, last week and just the other day, they have committed to a lot of security. I don't think you're going to need much security. I think once this deal gets done, it's over. Russia's not going to want to go back, and nobody's going to want to go back. When this deal ends, I really believe this deal is going to be over.
For those who are listening rather than watching, Zelensky at some pretty key moments was shaking his head ruefully during the answer. He really did not like that answer much.
He may have as well been jimming the camera from The Office.
Well, oh, yeah, there's a bit of that.
He was just sort of...
Yes. Yeah, no, he was doing a bit of Jim from The Office towards the camera. The point is, he wanted to interrupt, obviously, a number of times, but he kept holding his tongue. He's staying diplomatic. Trump's diplomatic. The issue, like, what's happening so far is Trump is letting Zelensky do all his security guarantee stuff. He keeps on saying, I'm just not going to do that. But he doesn't directly contradict Zelensky straight after. He lets Zelensky make his points. He moves on. He's been accommodating, and Zelensky is making his argument, but he's also been accommodating of Trump at the same time. They've both been very diplomatic, right? Okay. Then at minute 22, a One American News Network reporter asks Trump, what gave you the moral courage and conviction to re-engage with Russia? Real toughie there from One American News Network. Trump glows throughout the answer. He loves it. Zelensky, he could have just left it because Trump was happy. It was a stupid question. Let's just move on. But he decides to jump in. Okay, Trump is in the best mood ever at this point. And Zelensky... He's just been defending. He just defends Zelensky about his clothing because Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend had. I missed a question or two where Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend had to go with him for wearing a suit. Yeah, Zelensky, and Trump comes back to that to defend Zelensky's clothing. He's such a good mood. He's just been told about his moral courage from the One American News Network report. Everything's going great. He's glowing. He pays a compliment to Zelensky. He doesn't need to just go back round to be nice to him. And then Zelensky not only just goes straight back to security guarantees, but he actually suggests that Trump got walked over by Putin. So he really yucks Trump's yum. Have a look at this.
If I can answer. Yes, if I can answer.
Please,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Please.
And I do like your clothing.
Yeah, really?
Even though I think he's a great guy, by the way. But I don't know if you two like each other, but you know what? I think he's dressed. I think he's dressed
I like
beautifully.
this guy. I don't know
I think
him.
he's dressed beautifully.
So I have more serious things than answer on such questions. I will answer on more serious questions if I can. Yeah. So please, about security guarantees and about just ceasefire. We can't just speak about ceasefire and speak. It will not work. Just ceasefire will never work because I'm like a president. I have this experience, and not only me. Ukraine before my presidency, from the 2014, Putin broken 25 times. 25 times he broken his own signature. 25 times he broken ceasefire.
But he never broke to me. He never broke to me.
No, you were the president.
He never broke to me.
In 2016, you've been the president, Mr. President. You've been the president.
Oh, no.
So first of all...
Thin Ice.
Exactly. Okay, so first of all, you notice how as soon as Zelensky changed the oh yeah, great save, and then I love your clothes to security guarantees again, Trump went big breath in for a start. He didn't enjoy that, but then after Zelensky implied that Trump was Putin's bitch, he contradicted Trump 3 times.
To his face.
Yeah, 3 times. No one does that. 3 times. And Trump definitely did not enjoy that. But then, straight after that, I'm not going to play this to you because it'll take forever. Zelensky then rabbited on for about 3 more minutes about how much Putin hates Ukrainians and how they need security guarantees because of Putin's hatred. And Trump said nothing at all. And then they went, he didn't even say next question. He just said nothing. And then the press started to ask another question because Zelensky was finished. But then Zelensky started again.
This document, maybe other documents, it's a very good start, very good, but it will not enough to stop this person.
Mr. President, may I one more question, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
I asked President
They have to
Zelensky
pay.
this question.
This is the rule. This is the rule of the war. This is the rule of the war. During all the centuries, all the history, this is the rule of the war. Who began, those pay. This is the rule. Putin began this war. He has to pay all money for innovation. He has to pay.
Okay, so now Trump was really not enjoying this thought about how Putin has to pay, obviously. But you notice he's still not being rude, Trump. He's just being quiet and he's starting to stew a little bit. Just a little bit, right? I think after that whole bit I went through then, like first taking his compliments, shoving them back in his face, going to security guarantees, saying Putin made you his bitch 3 times in a row, rabbiting on for 3 minutes. I reckon Trump didn't understand half of what he said, by the way. We'll get to that. And then when it looks like it's over and Trump's pointing to another question, just going on with it again with more of this. I think all of that combined, that was when the presser turned, in my view. Most people don't say that. Most people don't say it turned until later, but I think that was the period where Trump's mood clearly turned. He remained diplomatic after that, but he was a whole lot less friendly. And I think that was when he was starting to stew.
No more podcast, bro.
No more podcast bros. Then we get to minute 33. Zelensky contradicts Trump again. This time when Trump is exaggerating about how much Ukraine's been destroyed. Once again, Zelensky not only just to his face goes, no, but also he implies that Trump has swallowed Putin's propaganda. And Trump replies with nothing. He still moves on. He's still been diplomatic. Have a look at this.
But a lot of cities have been destroyed. There are a lot of cities that are not recognizable. There's not a building standing.
No.
And a lot of things have
Mr. President, you have to come and to look. No. We have very good cities. Yes, a lot of things have been destroyed, but mostly cities alive, and people work, and children go to school. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes closer to front line, children have to go to underground schools or online, but we live. Ukraine is fighting and Ukraine lives. This is very important. And maybe it's Putin is sharing this information that he destroyed us. No, he lost 700,000 people, 700,000 soldiers. He lost everything. Yes.
Mr. President,
one more.
Trump's still being polite, but he's being quiet now.
Yeah.
He's definitely stewing at this point. And if I was Zelensky, I would have been reading the signs at this moment, thinking just play it straight. I mean, the signs are about to become clearer, but you can already, in my view, see that Trump is stewing. Right? But he's still trying to hold it together. This is not an ambush. Trump is trying to be diplomatic, even when he's pissed off at this point in time. Then we get to minute 38. There's now we're getting up to it. We got a question from a Polish reporter, essentially accusing Trump of being too close to Putin again, and America of not being a force for good. this reporter was not even slightly partisan. This reporter was just earnest. You could just tell they were just disappointed in America. And I don't think Trump enjoyed this question at all.
He's the one getting ambushed.
Yeah, and Trump kind of took it out on Zelensky at this point. I think it was a combination of the fact he was getting frustrated with Zelensky and the fact he was really didn't enjoy that question. Just have a watch.
Poland was under Russian control for decades after the Second World War. When I was a kid, I looked at the United States not only as a most powerful country, richest country in the world, the country that has great music, great movies, great muscle cars, but also as a force for good. And now I'm talking with my friends in Poland, and they are worried that you align yourself too much with Putin. What's your message for them?
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America. And for the good of the world, I'm aligned with the world. And I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred. And I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question. Yeah, please.
I want to respond to this. So look.
Okay.
A little teaser for what's to come.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to show it in context. What came directly before.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, this is a great illustration of Trump's double standards when it comes to Putin.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, he's saying he can't just insult Putin and make a deal. And then 20 seconds later, he's insulting Zelensky, saying how much he hates Putin.
Also, didn't he call Zelensky a dictator?
Yeah.
And then deny it?
He's insulted Zelensky plenty. But in this case, he insulted him literally 20 seconds after saying, you can't just insult these guys. Right, that's the first thing. And as I said, look at Zelensky's face when Trump did that. He just couldn't believe it. He was like, what? Where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah.
He was shocked, right?
It's a fantastic combo having a former comedian and a reality TV star. Like, there's a reason why it was fun to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's very expressive, Zelensky. It's also the first time that Trump really dropped the diplomatic front in his presser. Like that then should have been the sign to Zelensky. He reacted. He knew that was weird. That should have been the warning sign to Zelensky. Watch out, you are on real thin ice at this moment.
Again, comedian, read the room.
It was clear to me. I just looking back at that, you go, okay, Trump's clearly had enough, which is why he then said one more question. That's another obvious sign. Trump's going, okay, enough
I'm
fun.
not going to be diplomatic anymore, so let's cut
move
it out.
on. Let's just get this thing signed. This is starting to turn. Let's get out of here. That's what Trump's communicating, and that's exactly the millisecond when Vance butted in. Unlike Zelensky, Vance is very good at reading the room. and Vance knew that was exactly the moment to come in and inject a bit of Vance. Now, a quick word about Vance before we play the next clip. He has always been anti-Ukraine. Always. The week they were invaded, he said, quote, "I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another."
Whoa.
On a podcast.
On a podcast.
That was the week that it was actually, I think it might have been the day before they were invaded, when everyone's saying they're about to get invaded. Anyway, I don't even know why he was there. He's vice president. Why the hell was he in this meeting for? What's he got to do with it? I know when Marco Rubio was there, he was a Secretary of State, being a pot plant. But why was Vance there? He had nothing to do with this process at all. But if he was going to be there as the vice president, he should have been helping Trump out by helping wrap up at this point. I mean, why this thing went for 50 minutes, I have no idea. These things normally go for 5 minutes, if that. So Vance should have wrapped them up a long time ago. As I said, he's good at reading a room. He should have, when Trump started to get a bit annoyed, he should have wrapped up then. That's what he should have done if he's doing his job. But no, Vance's priority is almost always to, number one, suck up to the online right. Almost always in his bid for the presidency in 2028. And also, as I said, he's no friend of Ukraine. I don't think he particularly wants any deal himself. So he clearly sensed this was the perfect time to A, preen and showboat a bit for MAGAs, and B, undermine Zelensky. And this is what happened.
For 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Okay. I'm doing a lot of teasers here.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the teasers.
Yeah, I want to keep everything in context. So number one, notice as soon as Vance starts this, for 4 years, Trump is pointing him going,
Yeah.
like Trump is loving it, right? Like, yeah, that's it. Let's go. It's, for what it's worth, by the way, that argument doesn't even make sense. He's saying Biden wasn't thumping his chest and Trump wasn't thumping his chest.
I think the only thing thumping Biden's chest was the defibrillator that they had next to his office.
Yes. Thumping his chest and pretending his words matter more than his actions. Right? It's suggesting that Biden was pretending his words mattered more than his actions.
Yeah.
Hang on. He was acting. He sent weapons. That's an action. That's not words.
Isn't that the whole reason why you're upset is they sent $350 billion?
This is my point.
Yeah.
It's Vance who wants the words and not the action. He's aiming for diplomacy.
Well, he wants 2 words in particular. Thank you.
Yes, those are certainly words. He certainly, This whole section was 2 words as well, but very different words for Zelensky. But yeah, Vance is the one who wants words, not actions. So it's a bit of a confused argument he's making here. But anyway, this was now a red rag to a bull for Zelensky because he knows Vance couldn't give a shit about what happens to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Don't think Zelensky isn't fully aware of what Vance thinks about Ukraine. That's the first thing, right? B, he spent the last 50 minutes repeatedly explaining why diplomacy means nothing without security guarantees. And Vance just said, nah, your arguments are shit. Right? Vance didn't have to say anything. He could just shut up.
Wrong.
But Vance jumped in to give a big to the one message Zelensky was trying to take out of this press conference. And Zelensky hates Vance and knows Vance hates him, right? And this is where Zelensky made his big mistake, in my view. Because until now, Trump had played along with him, but his patience was clearly wearing thin. He was trying to end the presser. What Vance had just said didn't really matter. If Zelensky shut up, it was over. It was the end of the press conference.
Everyone goes home.
But he decided to argue for security guarantees again, but this time directly at Vance. And you can see immediately that Zelensky's in strife when Trump interrupts him to point out that Zelensky was saying that what Zelensky was saying didn't involve Trump at all. And so that's weird because what he was saying didn't involve Trump. So Trump didn't need to say that. But it just shows that Trump was getting extremely defensive at this point and interpreting everything as a personal attack. Just have a look.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014 is
Well, 2014.
Yeah. So
I was,
he
I
killed,
was not here.
Yeah, but,
That's exactly
but
right.
yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
So that was Zelensky's argument, delivered as patiently as he possibly could, although he delivered it quite well.
And not an agitating question at the end.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, he was holding it together. He was holding it together.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he really shouldn't have started arguing with JD Vance and cutting Trump out. But so far, he was still okay. I mean, he was heading down a dangerous path, as far as I'm concerned, at this point in time. But he might have still been okay at that point. Trump was still staying out of it. But Vance, that was the moment I think Vance really smelt blood. Like, he'd feel just how over his skis Zelensky was. And so then Vance turned the dial up a lot. And he deliberately attacked Zelensky in ways to both annoy Zelensky and, in particular, Trump. Have a look.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President.
Okay.
I've read about it in articles.
Yeah, I've seen the stories. Okay, so for a start, Vance accused him immediately of disrespecting Trump. The number one way to get under Trump's skin.
The cardinal sin.
Yeah, like he hates being disrespected so much. This is a guy driven by grievances. Like, so just insinuating that Trump's being disrespected, that's got Trump's ears pricked up. Number one, okay? Then he accuses Zelensky of forcing conscripts to the front lines, basically accusing him of being a butcher. Just after this controversy about is he a dictator or not.
Yeah.
Zelensky really didn't like that. And that was why Zelensky then sharpened his elbows and responded to exactly that accusation by asking Vance if he'd ever been to Ukraine, knowing very well that he hadn't been to Ukraine. Right? And then Vance comes up with that lame response about having seen the stories. And Zelensky starts muttering under his breath. You might have to turn up the volume and go back and listen to that again. But he's definitely muttering under his breath. And some people say it's a swear word. I don't know Ukrainian.
Heard that it sounded, yeah.
I mean, some people say it's bitch. Some people like maybe son of a bitch or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I listened hard. I couldn't hear it.
Pretty wild if true.
Yeah, I don't know what he was saying, but just muttering under his breath, even if he was saying sunshine and rainbows, it's still
Vance
not
for
good.
President 2028.
It's still not good, yes. And Vance then accuses him of running propaganda tours. So Vance is trying to cause as much damage as he can at this point. Zelensky's losing his restraint. Then Vance talks about respect again, because he's really trying to get Trump going here. Rather than addressing Trump and calming things down, Zelensky's so rattled by Vance at this point that he tries to go on with the argument with Vance, which is a huge mistake because Trump is stewing there. Vance is setting him up. And Trump is stewing, and Zelensky doesn't calm Trump down. He goes back to Vance. He's distracted, right? And Trump's lost control of his press conference at this point. You know he doesn't enjoy that, right? And so the combination of Zelensky's generally poor English, which is, as this argument goes on, is becoming worse and worse and harder to understand, and the fact that Vance has rattled him means that he's not expressing himself very well at all here. Trump misinterprets him, what he's saying, and that sets Trump right off.
Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful
I will answer.
to come to the Oval Office of the United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
that.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
Okay, so Zelensky there is simply making the point that if Russia invades a NATO country, which he predicts they will do next, then America will get dragged into a war, despite their nice ocean.
Yeah.
That's the point he's making.
Yeah.
It's a point he actually made earlier in the presser. I didn't play it. Believe it or not, there are bits I haven't played. There's a point he made earlier in the presser. Trump was fine with it. But now people are upset.
Yeah. They're seeing red, not hearing it. Yeah.
Yeah, now, just out of curiosity, by the way.
Please.
Did you find that? Did you understand what he was trying to say?
Yeah, no,
there?
absolutely.
You understood?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So if you can't believe that Trump doesn't understand what Zelensky's trying to say there, I've got a poll for you at this moment.
Oh, cool.
This is from Mark Halperin's outfit, Two Way. And they asked Americans, quote, this is the question. President Trump took offense when Zelensky made the point that America has a big ocean between it and this conflict, but that America would eventually feel it in the future. Based on what you saw in the video, did you find this remark? By Zelensky was offensive, not offensive, etc.?
Yeah.
62% found it offensive. 26% found it very offensive. 20% somewhat offensive. 16% slightly offensive. 38% found it not at all offensive.
Okay.
So the majority, a comfortable majority, found that remark offensive. I mean, I understood what he said, but obviously other Americans didn't.
Well, I guess we have the we're not Americans answering that question.
That's true. We're not. This year, I'm especially glad about that. By the way, for what's worth, in the same poll, 61% approved of Zelensky's handling of the meeting.
Oh, interesting.
53% approved of Trump's handling of the meeting, and 52% approved of Vance's handling of the meeting. An easily pleased bunch, it seems. They love the meeting.
I don't think they had the option for disapproved.
Anyway, then Trump tries to tell Zelensky off. Zelensky keeps trying to interrupt him, which also isn't the best way to deal with this by trying to interrupt Trump. But remember, Zelensky knows that his people are watching this at home. He can't afford to look weak, right? As the Kyiv Independent wrote, afterwards, for sure, Zelensky could have done a better job composing himself and restraining his reactions, but it's fair to say that he was put in a situation he couldn't win. If he let Trump and Vance, and apparently it takes two of them to win a verbal argument against one non-native English speaker, continue their line of attack on Ukraine unchecked, he would be seen as weak, both at home and abroad. Weakness is something a country at war can't afford to project. As I'm about to say to Bill, no one thinks that he was weak as a result of this, which is a good thing.
Yes.
It's a good thing from at least to show strength.
Kiev Independent,
yeah.
Two things. One, don't change your editorial because that little line about two English speakers versus one non-native, great.
Yeah.
Two, no, he shouldn't compose his reactions. They were the best bit.
Just to cap it off, J.D. Vance comes in again
to
talk about ingratitude and to bring up Zelensky in Pennsylvania, the thing that Vance knows would piss Trump off the most.
We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a
Brown,
good position. You don't have the
in
cards right now. With us, you start having
not playing
cards.
cards.
But right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
what are you
You're
thinking
gambling
about?
with
What are you
World
thinking
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's
with
back
all
to
respect
you.
to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A
This
lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank you?
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States
are
of
you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
God, Vance has been a prick.
Oh my, he's not playing fair.
Such a smarmy prick.
Yeah.
And remember what I said, by the way, about with Pennsylvania, the Republicans were so sensitive about that. So he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then there's more arguing. Zelensky's language barrier is becoming more and more of a problem because they keep on jumping on him. Like he's struggling to try and say anything, and then he gets interrupted, which is a horrible thing to do with a non-native speaker, right? Because they're really struggling. He really should have an interpreter. It would have slowed things down. And also there were just moments of misunderstanding. He would have been much better. Like on Fox, he had an interpreter, and he was much better off. When he finally gets a word in, he tries to say that we've been fighting Russia by ourselves, but with the support of America, which we're grateful for. You can see where he's going with this. But he does it poorly. Trump misinterprets him again as being ungrateful and interrupts and just goes nuts.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No.
Can
You've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this.
I
You have a damn good chance of
we are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said thank
stupid
you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about we are
if
speaking?
you didn't
You
have our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days.
So at this point in time, he's going, yeah, you're just Queen Putin again.
Yeah.
It's a mess now.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's officially an episode of PEP.
Yeah. We don't need to play anymore. You've seen the rest 1,000 times.
Oh, we aren't even going to play my favorite clip,
What's that?
personally. That's the...
What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay?
At that point in time, Trump was just
a bomb had gone off.
Yeah. A bomb had gone off inside his head. Like he was, as I said, I'm playing America, he was in Hulk mode at that point in time. He wasn't thinking straight. He was red in the face and just, I mean, there's no point playing that from then on because what I was trying to do is show you what actually happened.
Yes.
After that, it's all the spectacle, but there's no light after that. It's just a mess, right? So what am I taking out of this? 2 things. First of all, like I said, he really could have had an interpreter. It would have made so much difference at the critical moment. Secondly, all the provocation, all of it is coming from Vance, who ironically was arguing for diplomacy while showing the very opposite of diplomacy. He should not have been there. Vance should not have been there. And I blame him 100%. And so just to sum up here, you've got Zelensky comes in with his intention of arguing for security guarantees, not saying he's not going to sign the agreement.
No.
It's got nothing to do with the agreement. He's just arguing for security guarantees generally as a different part of the process. People are interpreting that since then as him saying he won't sign the deal without security guarantees. He never once, I played you enough for the press conference, he never once suggested that at all. His assumption is that they are separate elements. And like I said, that's what they're all assuming. Trump was assuming that. Zelensky was assuming that. That's the background. That's why I spent so long going through the background to prove to you that that is what is in the back of all of their heads.
Yeah.
That they are arguing about what's coming next, not about the economic deal. But in the process of him trying to argue for what's coming next, he gets on Trump's nerves eventually. He makes a couple of mistakes, a couple of mild mistakes, which I don't particularly blame him for. He's a non-native speaker, all the rest of it. He's been under a lot of pressure, whatever. I'm not going to make excuses, but I'm just saying, I'm not bashing Zelensky here, but I'm saying it's a fact he made some mistakes. I told you what they were. And gradually he and the press wore Trump down to the point where he was getting pissed off. And that is when Vance struck. And he struck hard and repeatedly. And even after Trump had blown up, he just stuck in one more little stiletto.
Fighting dirty.
Yeah, he just couldn't help himself. So that is what I think happened. You got any thoughts?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So what's Vance's deal? Does he think that setting off this bomb in the middle of a presser is going to get him the top job in 4 years' time?
I think he thinks that sucking up to Trump's MAGA supporters is going to get him the nomination. Which is the first
which
problem.
Matters, yeah.
To
him,
he's not thinking about the general election. He's thinking about how do I get through the primary.
Yeah.
Once you get through the primary, the economy is going to decide whether you're going to win the election. You just got to get through the primary. And so his priority is how do I suck up to the MAGAs, especially the online MAGAs. He knows they don't like Ukraine very much. And so him, first of all, doing the parochial thump in the chest, or why aren't you thankful? Why aren't you grateful? They love that. And they did. They loved that.
Yeah.
But then also him undermining Ukraine, that's not doing him any harm.
Oh, okay, sure.
In the primary, in the Republican primary, because those guys really hate Ukraine as well. So that's what I think Vance is doing. I think this is all for his interests and his personal interests. And I think also ideologically, to the extent he has any ideology, he doesn't want to support Ukraine anyway.
Sure.
So,
cool. That makes sense. Thank you.
So that's what I think. Anyway, that was a pretty long detour. Let's go back to Bill for the post. Let's find out what Bill thought about the whole thing. You can see this was too long for me to do in front of Bill when he only had 2 hours in total. Let's see what he had to think about it, and then we'll continue with Bill, and then we'll see you back here afterwards for a bit of a teaser, a very, very tasty treat. I've saved a beauty for you guys for the end of PEP 200. So we'll see you in about an hour. Okay, we're back with Bill. Bill, what's your take on what happened in the meeting?
Well, it's so funny in the in terms of how this played. I actually think it went really well for Zelensky, just to stand up to him. And I think long term, it actually helps. And, there's such outrage about it on the MAGA and stuff like this, but he looked really good on Fox News and he basically looked good in the meeting. It was clear that Trump was unhinged and that JD was being a little shit. And I actually think he came off really well. And I think in the long term, it's going to help him. And then just in talking it just in the abstract, I mean, you really have this low budget Sopranos thing going on with those guys. This thing about respect and Trump saying you didn't wear a suit and stuff like this, and it's just such it's so Sopranos-y because the whole thing about that mob ethos is that it's so hypocritical and inconsistent, and all these small little men doing all these outrageous, immoral things, and then all of a sudden talking about honor and dress and stuff like this. When you have Elon Musk around the White House looking like some sort of dark clown, rodeo clown, and then to talk to someone like Zelensky, who I think Ukraine is a very troubled country in a lot of ways. It was a Soviet republic for decades, and of course you have all this dysfunctionality, right, that extends for it. But he's unquestionably an extraordinarily brave person. Ukrainians are extraordinarily brave people who've been operating very well under terrible circumstances. And so in the end, I think it actually helps Zelensky, and we might see this as something where Trump had to give some grudging respect to him, possibly. I kind of was thinking about the first time I think Obama went on Fox News after the Super Bowl and had an eye-to-eye with Bill O'Reilly. I don't know if you remember this, but afterwards, Bill O'Reilly was talking about this. Yeah, I looked at him, and this is a pretty impressive guy. He said he literally, in a rare moment of intellectual honesty, he said, I didn't really have a problem with this guy being president. He looked pretty tough to me. So maybe we'll see. I'll come out well through that.
Well, for all the criticisms he's received from the right, no one suggested he came off as weak. That's for sure. He definitely came off as strong.
And none of those positions on the right, the other thing that's so hard about America these days is all these positions on the right are so fungible anyway. It's all, they're all just following in lockstep. And at a certain point, it'll start to go the other way. And then you'll see all the rationale about it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. In fact, actually, one of the critiques I've heard is people saying he was rude because he was leaning into Trump. But that's weird. Like that, if he was leaning away, they go, "Oh, what a coward!" But
obviously, there was one man, and I hate to use this sexist construct, but there was one man in that meeting, and that was Zelensky, and the other guys were just little twerps.
Okay, so we did for show this before. What do you reckon's going on with Trump and Russia? We look at this has been going for some time. The Trump-Russia thing is not new. I remember just even back in 2015, he was defending Russia's human rights record. He was saying saying America isn't so innocent. We're not so much better than them. Remember in 2017 or 2018, he took Putin's word over his own intelligence agencies and embarrassing.
And looked like a little twerp then as well.
Yeah. Yeah, his first-term policies, they weren't super sympathetic to Russia. There were sanctions, there were significant sanctions against Russia. He famously gave Javelin missiles to Ukraine, but that wasn't him doing that. That was his people. Like, he had a bunch of anti-Russian people in his cabinet. So whereas now we're seeing, I think, a much more pure Trumpian foreign policy than we did in his first term, because he's got people there who are matching his inclinations rather than the renter Republican crowd he had in 2017 and 2018.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's this reflexive shittiness in the part of MAGA and certain things. Like, did you notice that new Pentagon spokeswoman? I forget her name right now. I can look it up in a second. She's a deputy press secretary of the Pentagon. She's just one of these people who just said ridiculously awful things on social media for a long time. And one of the things she said is, give Kosovo back to the Serbs. There's just all these reflexive, crappy, awful, horrible things people say. And so in a way, and it's that contrarianism, like, oh yeah, I'm going to be on the side of Nazis, or I'm going to be on the side of Russia. And there's kind of that. And then, boy, we could get into this more seriously some other time, but a lot of the things these people are doing, the person who we're about to talk to next included, what their actions are indistinguishable from someone who's being blackmailed. I hate to say it. I mean, you just see people just taking these ridiculously contradictory, prostrating themselves in ways that are completely contradictory to things they've upheld their whole political career. And some of it, of course, on the right is explainable by the people who are afraid of MAGA and afraid of being primaried. And then there's others who just, they're just behaving in ways that you just think, well, that's exactly what they would do if someone had a cache of Facebook messages they'd been carrying on with their mistress for the past 20 years, or a boy mistress for 20 years, or anything worse than that. I mean, that's what it seems like to me, honestly. And I say that with having no evidence of it at all.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I think that those people are explainable. They're following Trump's lead. It's Trump that's the question for me. Like, because Trump's the one who's providing the lead. And, like, I mean, we're seeing right now this push to potentially lift sanctions against Russian entities and oligarchs from the State Department. We've just heard about Pete Hegseth instructing the US Cyber Command to halt all planning, not just operations, but planning of operations against Russia, and including offensive cyber operations. Although, to be clear, that order doesn't apply to the NSA or the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, who tweeted out CISA's mission is to defend against all cyber threats to US critical infrastructure, including from Russia. There's been no change in our posture. Any reporting to the contrary is fake and undermines our national security. But having said that, he's still trying to cut down on the Cyber Command from defending America against Russia.
The embassies, that was the latest thing today. They're going to try to shut down embassies and starving the State Department and, all this kind of soft power stuff that America just hasn't been doing enough of anyway over the past 30 or 40 years because of these misguided things of not wanting to spend, this minuscule percentage of the American budget on is just really crazy as well. And it does seem deliberately undermine America's influence and defense posture, frankly, because, you start closing all these embassies, you start losing all the connections to the local people and stuff like that. So it's incredible. Like, it's really, we're living in this very, very weird. Every morning you wake up and you see 3 news stories that you just simply can't, like Mike Johnson's chief of staff getting arrested for a DUI. And then Jen Johnson's response is, "Oh, he's a very responsible person. We know him very well." Yeah, and on the Kremlin thing, you got, like, just this week, Dmitry Peskov telling state television, "The new administration is rapidly changing all foreign policy configurations. This largely aligns with our vision." Like, who would have thought you'd ever see that? Hello, cat. What's the cat's name? Malarkey. Malarkey. Hello, Malarkey. Her sister is sitting on the chair next to me. Wonderful. Okay, so Bill, answer the question. Why? Why is this happening? Why is Trump so pro-Russian? I honestly don't know. And we're just going to know in 3 or 4 years. I mean, this is just the most extraordinary thing that's happened in the history of the world, that Europe of the West has been completely suborned by a picayune foreign power that really doesn't matter in the world. And the other alternative is that it's just this chaos. I mean, because he is such a chaos agent that this whole thing with Zelensky, as I was saying before, it's not a complicated thing. Ukraine's an ally. NATO's an ally. Russia is an enemy, and it's not even a significant enemy in this context. And the whole idea that we've been spending all these weeks and all these meetings and these crazy blow-ups and stuff, when it's obviously in America's foreign policy interests and it's our financial interest, because we want eventually Ukraine to be part of that community of nations, because it's another however many millions of people who buy American goods, get Disney movies, buy Apple Watches, and all this other crazy stuff, and present another bulwark on an enemy's border. It's the whole thing is nonsensical. So it's either that he's been totally suborned, or he's just such a reflexive, amoral chaos agent that he just doesn't see how damaging this is. And then, of course, you get the thing of how the Republican Party can be supporting it. And then you get the thing of how could Americans vote for this?
Can I throw a few thoughts? And this is just speculation. As you say, we're not going to know for some time. One, maybe it's personal. Maybe, I mean, Putin is an expert at manipulation, knowing just what to say. Trump is, I think, particularly easy to manipulate. It might be that Putin has convinced Trump that he's his only friend, that Putin is the guy that he can count on. Putin understands. Putin is his equal. Putin is his peer. No one else understands what he and Putin are going through. And he almost seems to identify with Putin. Like, during the meeting, he talked about Putin like Russiagate was experienced by Putin and not by him.
I've known him for a long time. I've dealt with him for a long time. He had to suffer through the Russia hoax. Russia was a hoax. It was all Biden. It was nothing to do with him. So he had to suffer through that, and he was able to do that.
It was bizarre. I mean, that's bizarre. I think he also has this attitude of how the more people tell him to not be with his friend, the more he wants to do it, kind of like oppositional defiance disorder. I think there's something going on there, but I think it's personal. I think he also, I think he's stuck in the 80s a bit, and he remembers Reagan and Gorbachev as the great man, and I think he wants to be that. Like, he always tries to reenact the 80s, "Make America Great Again," his Ronald Reagan slogan.
That's a fascinating point, actually. Yeah, that's really, really good. Because he does live in that dream world of his. And he does have this political superpower that honestly, we don't even talk about that much. I mean, he really is the most extraordinary political figure of our time. I mean, even more than Reagan or just someone who has done everything he has, and with his unconventional political opinions, the way he stands by them no matter what, and keep powering through and manages to come up on top. I mean, it's really, 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 really remarkable. Yeah, it's hard because even LBJ, right? I mean, LBJ played behind the scenes, and he wasn't out there just turning the American voting public to his will in the way that Trump has. Which, that's something a smarter person than us are going to look at it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it could just be incredibly simple, which is just that the Republican propaganda thing behind the scenes has just been working in ways we don't even understand. And it's just much more sophisticated, and he had all this advantage behind the scenes that we don't see. And it also has to do with Fox News and the sort of poisoning of the American electorate over so much time. And my other pet thing, which is how the Democrats have basically not risen to the challenge and spoken out against these things. I mean, I don't even hear Democrats even making the case for Ukraine as strongly as they should. I mean, we hear this to some extent. They're outraged at letting down this ally, but I think there's other ways they could be stronger. But I think your point about Gorbachev and Reagan is really good.
I was saying also that I think that it's possible, once again, along the same lines, that Putin and Trump share the same worldview. The big countries do what they want. They can just take Ukraine. They can just take Greenland. They can just take Canada. They can just take whatever they want. And Trump probably might think that Russia's justified in taking Ukraine. That's his attitude. Big countries can just do whatever they want. I think he also believes in transactional power dynamics, the same way that Putin does as well. I think, and Xi does as well. I think they all get along quite well, those three. They all kind of had the same attitude, I think, to life and to power.
But honestly, those two are laughing at him, though, right? They're not sitting there going, "Oh, here's these three men," right? The two of them are kind of laughing at Trump. Don't you think, behind his back?
Probably. Yeah. And by the way, for those who say, there's an easy answer, which you haven't discussed yet, which is Trump's just trying to get Russia to the negotiating table. Simple. He wants his Nobel Peace Prize. He just wants his peace.
But he's not going to get, but he's literally the only person who thinks that. No, he's never, ever going to get the Peace Prize, right?
I don't think he is.
He would get a Nobel Peace Prize by standing by Ukraine, don't you think? I mean, that's something that would get the attraction of the Nobel Prize Committee. But appeasing Russia is you got to be kidding. You're talking about Scandinavia.
Yeah, I don't think Trump's ever going to get a Nobel Peace Prize no matter what he does. But having said that, for exactly the reason you just said, you're talking about Scandinavia. But leaving that aside, I don't think that what he's doing is getting Russia to the negotiating table. If anything, I think it's the opposite. I think this is prolonging the war because he's giving Russia all the carrots and Ukraine all the sticks.
He's trying to get them, I think it could, if there is any sophistication at all, he's just trying to maneuver to where he can give Russia a good chunk of Ukraine and then declare victory or whatever and walk away, which of course would be an ungodly, a horrific result, which is what I think everyone's afraid of.
But what I'm saying is if he's doing that, Russia would be thinking, well, why don't we just go for more? He's just giving us whatever we want. Why wouldn't we go for more? What's been happening during this negotiation? Russia has been bombing the crap out of Ukraine while this has all been happening. Russia isn't sitting back just waiting for cards to be dealt. Russia's going, right, this is a time for us to dominate. And so they're just trying to dominate as hard as they can. So if you just keep on giving them carrots, they'll just want to dominate more. Why would they settle at this point in time? I saw a poll from Russia's Levada Center the other day that shows that public support for the war is now 80%. It's the highest level since this is Russia. It's the highest level since March 2022. And I know Russia's an authoritarian country. You can't necessarily trust their polls. But still, the highest since March 2022. They're loving it. They're loving the war. Why would they stop the war right now? Because Trump's making it great for them. So I actually don't think it is ending the war. I think that Russia needs a reason to want to end the war, and Trump isn't giving it to them. Trump is giving them, Trump's giving Ukraine lots of reasons to end the war, but not Russia, as far as I can see.
Right, which is just another disturbing thing, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that people say, I don't know, is that maybe it's about China, that Trump sees his entire presidency as being about stopping China. And right now, China and Russia are allies, and you might want to peel Russia off from China by sucking up to them a bit. I don't know what you think of that.
But then he wouldn't have canceled the PPP. You know, the whole point of that is to, you know, create these bonds. You know, and I'm less scared of those countries just because, you know, when you look at it from China's point of view, they're surrounded by Japan, South Korea, all these other countries. You know, they're not, you know, America and Europe control, you know, what, 2/3 of the globe. And, you know, we should be arguing for control in Africa and stuff like that. And I don't see how, you know, undermining America's defensive posture in Western Europe or in Europe helps, you know, to ally with Russia to defend China. I mean, there's so many other things you can do against China. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand. Maybe in his crazy mind, he's thinking of that, but
have you got anything else to say? Because if not, well, let's go into your topics. Okay, Bill, the rest of this podcast, at least where you're here, is about you. So let's go Washington Post.
Okay, yeah, this is just this is all part of some very, very sad developments in American media. It's been a really rough year. I'm going to forget about some of these, but you know, I don't know if you saw Disney just took a big chunk out of ABC News. I think at least 100 people or more got thrown to the curb because of cutbacks there in ABC. And Disney, of course, owns ABC, just to make clear. And ABC is kind of one of the smaller American news networks right now. But, you know, it still is a force, particularly among older people who watch the evening news. It has a decent website. And, of course, it even has 538, which is something you and I know consult all the time. And all those people got given their walking papers as well. So that's a bad thing that happened. I don't know if you noticed the other day.
Sorry, so 538 folding up?
Yeah, they just laid everyone off.
Had no idea. Oh, shit. You're right. That strikes me so much harder than anything else you could talk about. My God. Sorry, go on.
And Disney, of course, is a behemoth. You know, the number of people involved are nothing compared to what Disney does in a given year. But there's a whole bunch of upheavals in the Marvel world and in the Star Wars world and in the Pixar world and in the animation world. And they still got to deal with ESPN at some point and streaming, and there's all sorts of roiling stuff there. And it's hard to second guess all these people, and sometimes they just do it as a sop to Wall Street. Says, "Hey, look, we're cutting costs, we're getting rid of people from ABC News, and nobody cares about it at all." So anyway, meaning I don't know how much it's about whether the actual media business or just Disney doing it performatively is my point. But the Wall Street Journal just got rid of a whole bunch of super high level people, particularly people covering the digital and tech world. And who else? And then of course you got CNN, which of course is a pawn in this whole Warner Brothers Discovery merger from a while back. I forget how much it is, but we always forget when we talk about all these mergers and stuff that what often happens, and I forgive me if I don't remember the exact thing, but I think it was a merger when Warner Brothers, which owns CNN, and Discovery, which is a cable network bundle company, merged. I think they took on $50 billion worth of debt, which is just crazy. And so then you're running this company, which might be a solid money-making company, but when you're paying down that much debt, it's just crazy. So then people are saying, okay, we got to cut back. And of course, that's one of the things that scotched the CNN streaming initiative that they've been working on. And so anyway, so CNN is really got to be worried right now. And then of course you have everything that's happened to the Washington Post. That was just a setup to all the things.
Sure.
And the Washington Post, which of course is a storied American publishing empire, as even under Jeff Bezos, was actually doing decently, but particularly in the last 2 or 3 years has really been taking some financial hits. Supposedly it lost half of its online audience. And the last I saw, last couple of years, been losing close to $100 million a year.
Yeah.
And Jeff Bezos, it's funny because I think Jeff Bezos is technically the second richest person in the world after Elon Musk. When you also realize that Amazon is not a lot of the Tesla valuation is silly, right? It's just it's trading at just a ridiculous multiple of whatever it is, just the way a lot of those tech companies do. And Amazon used to do that, but now it's Amazon and it has these things, so it just makes an enormous amount of money. And Jeff Bezos got divorced and lost half of his fortune. So Jeff Bezos is really the richest person in the world, and it's based on an actual real company that makes a lot of money rather than Tesla, which doesn't really yet.
So, just before you go on, Bill, I just pulled up the numbers with the Washington Post just for you. I mean, like you said, that they lost $100 million last year, but I've just got some visitor numbers which puts this in context. In January 2021, they were receiving 22.5 million daily visitors. By mid-2024, it was receiving 2.5 million to 3 million daily visitors, so it was like a tenth. In November 2020, they had 114 million digital visitors in November 2020, so election month. In November 2024, 54 million. So that's half the visitation.
That first one you said, I don't know what that meant, but that's the one where we lost that many readers is a really good.
Yeah, so go on. Yeah.
And I go into all that to say that, so anyway, but the point being, Jeff Bezos has a lot of money that, again, he is technically the second richest person in the world right now, but really he's made a lot more money than Elon Musk probably ever will.
Yeah.
And, but even when you're Jeff Bezos, as Eugene Dirksen said a long time ago, $100 million here, $100 million there, pretty soon you're talking about real money, right?
Yeah.
So, and I say that to say that, hey, Bezos has a right to say, come on, we have to figure out we're doing something wrong with the Washington Post, right? So, so we all know what happened last few months. The Post was preparing endorsement of Kamala Harris. He pulled him at the last minute.
Yeah.
Now, and so that's been damaging his reputation. He was one of those clowns who showed up at Trump's inauguration, kissed the ring. A few months ago, a political cartoonist at the Post did a cartoon where basically had Bezos kissing Trump's ring, and the editor pulled it. Now, internally, that editor said, hey, look, we've been bashing on Bezos a lot, and it was a point where we've done it enough. I didn't want to pile on, which is a legitimate editorial position. So I don't want to make it seem necessarily that was a bad thing. On the other hand, they still should have run it just on general purposes. And now the thing that really blew things up the last couple of weeks is that Jeff Bezos apparently went to the editorial page of the Post, and he laid down some new rules for the Post opinion pages. And I won't go into the whole thing, but famously what he said is, hey, we're going to focus on personal liberties and free markets. Okay, those are quotes, quote, personal liberties, unquote, and quote, free markets, unquote. And we're going to let people who don't agree with those things write elsewhere.
Yeah, I'll give you the exact quote from his tweet. We're going to be writing every day in support and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets. We'll cover other topics too, of course, but viewpoints opposing those pillars will be left to be published by others.
Right. Yeah. Now, this is crazy on a bunch of levels. So, but let me finish setting up. So that's obviously created a lot of controversy. The editorial page editor of the Post quit. And I think in that posting, Bezos said something else. He said, what I want from you is either a hell yeah or a no.
Yes.
A hell yeah. And so that's the thing. And of course, that's completely exacerbated the issue of people canceling their subscriptions to the Post. NPR reported they've been losing hundreds of thousands of subscriptions. I have to say, to be honest, I finally quit mine. I love the Washington Post. I lived in Washington. I read it every morning from cover to cover. And at a certain point, I'll explain I have a slightly different attitude toward this than some people. So it's exacerbating the Post's financial problems, and in journalistic circles, it's become a big issue. Marty Barron is the famous former editor of the Boston Globe who took over the Post just before Bezos came in. He's always been a Bezos supporter. He wrote a book talking about how great Bezos was supporting the Post, but now he too has turned on Bezos and said how awful this is. Okay, so that's the setup. Now, there's so many odd things, and this is what I made reference to earlier, that Bezos is a very rich guy and he can do what he wants, but there is a way, and I'm just sort of being provocative here, that what he is doing is consistent with the actions of someone who might be being blackmailed, as opposed to someone following a personal philosophy. He's been very eloquent in the past, the philosophy of defending the Post's independence, standing up to people. He endured a lot of abuse during the first Trump administration.
Yes.
And Trump probably cost him a lot of money, went after Amazon, went after his space company, contracts with the government, all sorts of other things. Now, obviously, his tune's changed. So, and the thing is, though, he owns the paper and he can do whatever he wants. It's great that he does this. It's totally fine for him to enforce his vision of what the Post's opinion should be, right? It's totally fine for him to write the goddamn opinion pieces himself. This is even an issue, and it irritates me in the media when people get all weepy about this because, freedom of the press, as was famously expressed, is reserved to those who own one. And the internet era has changed a lot of that. And there used to be a saying too that you don't want to argue with someone who buys ink by the barrel full, right? But that, of course, has changed. But still, it's a very formidable institution, and of course, he's a formidable person given how much money Howard he has. So it's very curious that he would change in this 180-degree way, and not only that, but so transparently, so cravenly, so inconsistently, and almost absurdly. Because the other thing we have to got to remember is that the Washington D.C. area is arguably the most prosperous, dense area in the United States. A lot of Washington, D.C., the city proper, is very poor. There's a very poor African-American sort of half of the city. The rest of it is not like that. And of course, what they call the surrounding counties, in America we call them counties, which is known generally as the Beltway area, is just vastly wealthy, just incredible. So, and of course, you have the center of the American government, which is the biggest company in the world. And of course, all those people live in the Beltway, and all of those people subscribe to the Washington Post. Trump has gone to war with those people. This is the Post readership. This is its base. And the Post is now allying itself with the person who's declared war on this. So it makes no sense.
I was going to say, we'll get to this a bit later, but even if it's not about Trump at all, even if this is just Jeff Bezos letting his inner libertarian freak flag fly, the Washington Post, as you say, is a government paper. It's a paper for federal workers. Why would they be interested in free markets? It's just such a great way to alienate your base, even if it wasn't about Trump.
Well, but I think I disagree with that, because the thing is, I'm sure a lot of those people do, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Yeah. I'm sure they respect that. They believe in free markets too. Of course they do. Everyone believes in personal liberties and free markets, and they would even support the Post doing massive investigating pieces about inefficient government bureaucracies where money's being wasted and corruption in the United States government. Everyone loves that stuff. Like, not like they're not like, whatever Teamsters or something where you're not allowed to attack the Teamster leadership. I mean, very, very sophisticated people. They all have different political opinions, and the vast majority of them do their jobs really well and are dedicated. It could be a lot more than that not working in government. And everyone likes a good story about how the Commerce Department wasted money on a whatever. And there's all these big problems, how these big departments, they'll spend $300 million literally on some new computer system, then have to throw in the trash. So,
okay. All right. Corrected. Go on.
So the first thing about this is that it's so just financially negative for it, right? It's just undercutting the Post's raison d'etre, number one. Number two, if you really wanted to do something to hurt the Post and support Trump, you would actually rein in the investigating people, and you could do it in a very, very sophisticated way. You'd say, you guys do so well. We really support you guys. Pulitzer Prizes, yeah. But can you trim 15% out of your budget this year? Maybe hire someone when they leave. And in just 2 or 3 years, you can really do a lot of damage to an institution like the Post just by making it a little less attractive to people and saying, why don't you scamper over to the Wall Street Journal or something like that, or Bloomberg, and you just let the attrition of good people, and you can damage the paper that way. And he's not even doing that. So
Are you sure he's not doing that as well?
well, they're losing people, but they don't have to do it in such a flamboyant way.
Yeah.
And it's like he's setting himself on fire, but he's doing it because the whole other thing is, who cares what the opinion pages of the Washington Post say anymore?
Yeah.
It's like again, when you talk about the 80s, Trump's fixation with being on the cover of Time magazine and stuff like that. Another way I sometimes think it does have the marks of something like blackmail is that no one cares what the editorial page is. It used to be you'd sit there on your couch in the morning, you turn the page, you get to the editorial page, and it's like, boom, what the Washington Post said today. And I probably said this on this before, and you go downstairs in your building and you talk to the doorman. Oh, did you see what the Post said today? Like, that's how Washington used to be. You look at these things online and you can't tell if it's a thundering editorial or if it's a gossip column or something like that. So just the fixation of that is weird. So those are the curious things. Now I want to tell you my objections to it, which that's the fatuousness and the intellectual dishonesty of the framing of this issue about personal liberties and because it just makes no sense. Okay. Because again, we're talking about the United States of America. We believe in free markets, right? I mean, the whole problem with the tariffs issue is that it interferes with the free markets. We think that free markets raises the standard of living in countries all over the world, which means people buy American goods. American goods are better than other people's goods, so we'll make money doing that. Plus, when we trade with people, we don't have wars, we stop drugs, we improve the rule of law in those countries, yada, yada, yada. And make it sound like that there's all these essays in the Washington Post of all places against free markets is just kind of crazy, other than nuanced, wonky, sort of not very important discussions amongst economists and stuff like this, and some political theorists. And I'm not saying the Post never runs stuff like that, but I hate to use this, but you know what that thing that you hear on all the hip podcasts, the Overton window?
Yeah.
I talk about that, right? That's the limit of acceptable things you're allowed to talk about in the media and public life, which obviously has changed in America previously over the past 8 years, is Bernie, nobody's making a, calm cases for anything other than once in a while nationalized healthcare, which I don't actually know if I've ever read it. And then personal liberties is another specious, fatuous sort of thing to take a stand on, because we're all in favor of personal liberties. And of course, it all matters how you define the term and how you spin it for all the current things. And obviously the most or the obvious one right now is things like vaccination. Like, do you have the personal freedom not to get your kid vaccinated? And so where is he going to come down on that? And that's one where obviously he can go onto the crazo side of it with that whole thing of personal freedom. But of course, what that doesn't talk about then is personal responsibility, or how the rest of us should behave. And of course, the other irritating thing about this is that why are we even arguing about this? Because we all know what the answer is. The answer is yes. If you don't want to get vaccinated, that's great, but then stay home because you're obviously dangerous people. One of the precepts of libertarianism, if you want to frame it like that, is that you should be able to do what you want as long as it doesn't harm other people. And it's just like, in a way, it's sort of like civil disobedience. The point about civil disobedience isn't that you get away with it; it's that you disobey, or disobedient in a civil way, and you take your punishment. You refuse to get up when the police tell you to, and you go to jail. And that's what Martin Luther King did. But of course, they don't want it that way. They want to, be performative about the thing and not take that responsibility. So that, to me, actually is a thing that and I've been listening to a lot of people talking about this recently, is that, to me, that's the offensive thing. And I think that's why the editorial page editor left. It wasn't that he was being restricted from doing things, but it offended his, sense of just, intellectual honesty or just common sense, to be thinking that I'm just going to be sitting here arguing, with this guy making sophistic arguments about personal liberty, when smart people have discussed all these things a long time ago, and it's really not an issue. And this is another pet thing of mine anyway, is that to this day, I think if you asked a lot of Americans, like if you said, don't you know that the death rate in the red states under COVID was drastically higher than it was in the states that, enforced masking and vaccinations more stringently? Like, you just never hear that debate, which is crazy. And so for him to say that, oh, I'm just going to come down on, we're only going to allow debate on this one issue, when in fact, this big obvious thing that results in the death of hundreds of thousands of unnecessary deaths in America never even got talked about, is even more irritating. So that's why I canceled my subscription. It's just because of that, the intellectual dishonesty of that frame. But what did you think?
Okay, well, first of all, I agree with you that it's his newspaper. He's got the right to do this. I also agree with you that most of America is into free markets and personal liberties. That's not a huge stand to take. Well, certainly every corporate newspaper is into free markets and personal liberties. I think there'd be a lot of socialists out there who would say, I don't see myself getting printed in the Washington Post very often. I think it's... I also agree with what you said earlier on about it's good to be honest and upfront. Because I imagine there are papers that put their thumb on the scales and they don't tell anyone they're doing it. So for him to be upfront, that's a good thing. That's fine. I also think it's also important that you distinguish between the opinion section and the news section, because there are papers out there that have extremely dubious opinion sections and great news sections, like the Wall Street Journal, for instance, which has just a pathetic opinion section, but its news section is respectable. There's like a
quickly, the Wall Street Journal opinion section is actually in my sort of anecdotal sense, is I see people talk about the Wall Street Journal opinion section thing much more than the Post. It's kind of weird. I mean, like you just don't hear people talking about the Washington Post opinion section. So it is, but I totally agree with you. The Wall Street Journal is a really interesting case where the opinion section is crazy, and of course the reporting has been pretty strong.
Yeah. So I am interested to see whether he does maintain the news as it is, or if he, like you suggested there, potentially he could be undermining it secretly. We'll see. We'll find out about that. I still don't know exactly what it means, what he said. Does he literally mean he won't allow a single person to advocate for social democracy? Because if he does, that's strange. But because there is the Democrats are increasingly becoming a social democrat party over time. And it would be odd if he just outlawed any discussion along those lines. So we'll see. We'll see what he means by that. I don't think it's very well thought through at all, what he's suggested. Like, how can, like when you talk about the freedom thing, where I thought you were going to go was the obvious irony of him writing the words, freedom is ethical, it minimizes coercion, while enforcing points of view for his writers. It seems quite ironic. You can't be pro-freedom and then tell people that what they're going to write. I mean, he has a right to, but it's hypocritical. I don't think that's very well thought through. I think that he's made a serious error in the way he sees publishing today, which is, he wrote in his little screed, there was a time when a newspaper, especially one that was a local monopoly, might have seen it as a service to bring to the reader's doorstep every morning a broad-based opinion section that sought to cover all views. Today, the internet does that job. But with his decision, he is making the Washington Post exactly like every other publication on the internet. The internet is filled with publications with a point of view, with a narrow interest group, with trying to prosecute some kind of line. What they don't have is this generalist kind of opinion section with lots of with a rainbow. You don't find that on the internet. And he's turning the Washington Post into the rest of the internet. So I think that's poorly thought through from him, from a business point of view. He's removing their point of difference, and he's removing their prestige. Like, that's part of the prestige, that they are this generalist institution. Sorry, Bill, you want to say something?
Well, that's I totally agree with you that it just seems so perverse, like to do it in such a loud and flamboyant manner, when again he could, if he did have some way that he was just trying to undermine the Post, he could have done it in a way that was less noticeable, right?
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, there's so many levels of hypocrisy.
Yeah. I also think that the like in the question of like what you didn't really get into too much about the suck up the Trump angle of it, which I think is an interesting area. Because I mean, going free markets and personal liberties, like I said, it's not necessarily sucking up the Trump. Reason Magazine is personal liberties and freedoms, free markets, but it's very critical of Trump because Trump is opposed to personal liberties and free markets. Like Trump is the very opposite of personal liberties and free markets. He's about tariffs. He's not about the freedom of the press. He's about having things exactly like he wants. So it's not necessarily pro-Trump, but there is a context here, and you started the context, but you gave us a few examples, but I'll give you a few more because there is full context. It's not just about cancelling the Kamala Harris editorial. And by the way, he cancelled the Kamala Harris editorial because he didn't want to seem biased. Quote, what presidential endorsements actually do is create a perception of bias, a perception of non-independence. Since then, he tweeted out a gushing congratulations to Trump when he won the election. Big congratulations to our 45th and now 47th president on an extraordinary political comeback and decisive victory. He flew to Mar-a-Lago. He sucked up to Trump in Mar-a-Lago, where he discussed a doco about Melania, and this is well worth mentioning.
Oh, right.
Amazon paid $40 million for a doco about Melania, which was 3 times what any other studio offered. And it was the most they'd ever spent on a documentary about the most boring person on earth. Right? Why did he do that for? And by the way, 70% of that money went into Trump's pockets. He then donated $1 million to the inauguration. And that is the context in which he's made this decision. So there's definitely sucking up to Trump going on. I think it's actually, like, you made a good point as well about the first term. He took fire. It's not like he can't take flack from Trump. In the first term, he lost cloud computing contracts for Amazon because of Trump. That was $10 billion, by the way, that cloud computing contract he lost. He also, Trump kept on trying to increase the postage rates for Amazon. Just for Amazon?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So he was taking some fire. But what's changed now? I mean, you got Elon Musk and Oracle now, a massive Trump suck-ups, and they're in the same industry. Oracle does cloud computing. Elon Musk does SpaceX to Blue Origin. That's true. Trump's also more vengeful. And I wonder if this says something about Trump. That even the people who are resisting him 6 years ago now are going, fuck, is this too hard? Like it might be a sign of where we're at. Jeff Bezos might be the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. The bald canary.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, from my perspective, I don't think this is smart. I think that they're already bleeding, and this is going to impact their core audience without providing an alternative audience. So I think they're circling the drain a bit here. But I don't think Jeff Bezos cares, because this is just $250 million and Amazon is hundreds of billions of dollars. And I think that this is going to hurt Washington Post, but I don't think Jeff Bezos cares. And I think that this is just a sign of just how bad things are getting with Trump's vengefulness these days. And it's not a good sign. So that's my take.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he paid $250 million for it, more or less. And let's just say he's lost $200 million at least, and probably more. So we're talking about $500 million that ultimately, because it's hard. I mean, I just think if you tried to sell the Washington Post today, the New York Times bought the Boston Globe however many years ago for $1 billion. The Boston Globe, which is a pretty, minor paper.
Yeah.
Now, the whole idea that 20 years later you get the Washington Post for $250 million is just crazy.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what kind of other assets the Post has, but it's hard to imagine that, given the losses and the loss in readership. But on the other hand, maybe something could happen. Maybe it could turn into a nonprofit like the Tampa Tribune or something like that. But again, it's just really weird. And maybe there is this thing where Trump is saying, look, I want you to rein in the editorials that for some reason. But I don't even think Trump cares about the Washington. He cares about New York Times editorials maybe, but it's hard to figure out why the focus is on the editorial page. That's the other bizarre thing. And and the other thing that you mentioned about how he was talking about how endorsements lead to an impression of bias, which again, it's completely specious because everyone understands what the editorial page is. That's an opinion. Most people get that there's a difference between. I don't buy the thing that people don't understand the difference between editorials and stuff because editorials are quite clear about what they are. It's the position of this paper. You've read in our reporters. Everyone knows the difference, and just that fixation on it has one of those earmarks of that Trump thing of just stomping out the like owning the libs in a way. Like, oh, let's screw over the Washington Post editorial page. That'll stick it to them. That's what it feels like to me, which is why I think that there's something else going on, though I could be wrong. And then the whole issue about when he brings up the declining support and respect for the press in America, which is, I think we've talked about this before. That's just a whole other specious thing, because of course, on the one hand, you have all this imaginary attack on the mainstream press about how biased it is, which just isn't true. And then you have the people I shouldn't even say on the left, but on the same part of the spectrum who are appalled by what you see in Fox News and stuff like that, and are disappointed in the lack of spine to some extent in the mainstream press, which we see, notwithstanding how strong the Post and the Times has been, and to some extent the Wall Street Journal, the sort of cravenness of CNN. And then there's people like me who are appalled by MSNBC, because even if they, their politics are a lot more saner than a lot of other things, they have so many silly things going on, and they're so biased in their own way, and have these sort of fabulous, like Joy Reid and Brian Williams in the mix, that it's hard to take them seriously. And I think when you add all those together, sure, you have declining respect in the press, but that's not to say that people don't respect the good part of the press and are appalled by the bad part of the press. And of course, the bad part of the press on the right is several orders of magnitude worse than the failings on the left, even though they're good too, in my personal opinion.
Okay, so Bill, it looks to me like we got 5 to 10 minutes before you've got to go. So you tell me, you were talking about the AP thing at some point in time. You were talking about crypto at some point in time. You were talking about the Oscars at some point in time. You just don't have time to do any of them.
Okay, so do you want to hear about the Oscars?
Yes, please.
I love Oscars. I love Oscars as much as Election Day. And and I was on, I don't know if you know, I was on Late Night Live a couple of weeks ago talking with Mr. David Marr about the Oscars. And I had this sort of pet issue about them that doesn't get talked about enough. And that is that there's this crazy thing going on in the American movie industry, and people talk about some of the effects of it, but they don't talk about what's really going on. And briefly, what's happened to American movies is that 20 or 30 years ago, we had what you or I would call movies. Okay, we got to go to the movies. Hey, we're going to see Forrest Gump. We're going to see Braveheart. We're going to see Mrs. Doubtfire. We're going to see Shakespeare in Love, Saving Private Ryan. All these kind of just movies. They were just dramas, comedies. Some were adventure, some whatever. And those were the movies. And then kind of starting perhaps with the Phantom Menace, because the Star Wars people were quiet for a while, right? And then they came out. And Phantom Menace became in non-adjusted dollars the highest grossing movie of all time for a while. And I think that was 1999. And then all of a sudden Hollywood looked up and said, wow, you can make a lot of money with sequels. And of course, sequels have been around for a long time, but not like this. And so, and the industry really started changing. And 10 years ago, I forget how many, maybe not that far, you had the top 20 movies in America, basically the top 20 highest grossing movies of the year, okay, in North America, which is generally parallel in Australia, were basically overwhelmingly an entirely different type of movie. And that type of movie was a franchise, a sequel, a reboot, a Harry Potter movie, a mashup, a movie based on toys, or what they call established IP, intellectual property. Now, once in a while, you have a movie based on IP, like say Barbie, that's pretty exceptional. sometimes you have movies based on IP. They're just basically good, like based on a book like The Hours or something like this. But overwhelmingly, we're talking about The Fast and the Furious 10, Despicable Me 4, Harry Potter, whatever. And
Pirates
then,
of the Caribbean,
yeah, all that stuff. And then the thing where you often have something like Twilight, and they'll make a movie and a movie and a movie, and then they'll make the last one, and they'll say, "Oh, we're making it into 2 parts." So just crazy, crazy stuff. But the thing is, Hollywood constantly gets rewarded. So as I said, the way things have been for the past 10 years is basically 18 or 19 of the highest grossing movies of the year were in this sequels and the like, right? And once in a while, you have a movie that kind of sneaks in. Crazy Rich Asians, The Help, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, things like that. Once in a while, you have sort of an anomalous movie, but literally one a year, sometimes 2. So then another thing has been happening. You hear about all these big box office grosses, right? I mean, it's just crazy, right? All the records that get broken every single year, and you just go, "Wow, that's amazing." But the thing is, they're always in unadjusted dollars. And what this has obscured, and this happened in North America and also in Australia, is that actual ticket sales have declined year after year after year after year. And even before the pandemic, they'd gone down 30%. And of course, the pandemic really hurt. Bounced back a little with Maverick, Barbie, Oppenheimer, stuff like this. But particularly when you consider that the population is growing at the same time, the fact that movie sales are going down at the same time, it's really a remarkable thing. This is an industry that's lost 30 or 35% of its audience base. And again, I'm not even throwing in the pandemic. Okay? So, and then if you think about it, what I was talking about originally, those movie movies, they used to make up about 50 or 60% of the top 20 every year. And now they don't exist at all. So you have, instead of like 50 or 60%, it's basically 5%, maybe 1 in 20. Plus the decline in ticket sales anyway of about 30 or 35%. So you're just talking about the audience for plain old-fashioned movies is just completely gone. I mean, just literally less than 10% of what it was. And of course, you have a bunch of little movies that come out, right? People still go see them, but it's very small. So the Oscars had to figure out how to deal with this. And I respect the Oscars, and to their credit, they started going, well, screw those sequels. We're going to honor movies that we think are good, because it's all about movie making. And it's a pretty uncorrupt organization. And so what you start seeing are these movies that don't get movies being nominated for Best Picture. This is just one metric, but I think it's very telling. The box office grosses of the movies that are nominated for Best Picture are going down, 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 down. And once in a while you have a Toy Story in there. Once in a while you have an Avatar in there, or a Wicked, or a Barbie. But overwhelmingly, it's getting smaller and smaller. Oppenheimer was incredibly anomalous. Oppenheimer was a pretty big hit. Overall, though, in the past, let's say 20 years, probably 13 or 14 of the lowest grossing Best Picture winners of all time have all been there. I mean, just unbelievably small. And again, that's not even counting Coda and Nomadland, which came during the pandemic, which basically had a 0 box office gross. So basically, you don't have the sort of what you might call the middle class of movie going anymore. And so the Oscars are rewarding these small movies. But the trouble is that nobody wants to watch the Oscars anymore, because no one's even seen these movies. And the other thing is that the Oscars have gotten very perverse. And I think I talked about this last year. I mean, just how crazy the nominees are, like Amelia Perez, which is about a Mexican murderous drug boss cartel guy who wants to transition. And plus it's a musical, except a very weird musical. Plus it's in Spanish. And then, of course, you have the movie where the woman had sex with the fish monster and all these other things. So we're living in just a very, very strange time with the movie industry generally. That Hollywood, to its credit, has reserved the Oscars to reserve still what it thinks is good about movie making, but no one's watching the Oscars anymore. Final point, 100 million people used to watch the Oscars, then 50, 60, then 40, then 30. And it basically went down to 10 at one point. It's kind of bouncing out to 17, 18, 19. But that is just, I mean, what is that? That's an episode of Yellowstone. It's not like the number being watched. It's not like on a Super Bowl level, which is what the Oscars used to be. So it's a little bit sad, and I respect what they've been doing, what they do, but I think they're really screwing things up. There's a really big change coming next year. Do you know what it is?
What?
They're adding a new category, casting.
Okay.
They're going to bring millions of people back, I think. Once Francine Mainsler gets her long overdue recognition. So it's a little sad. I'm not clear what they're going to do.
All I'd say, Bill, is that, I think that was really valuable, what you just went through there, and it's undoubtedly all true. But I would just say that the entire entertainment industry is dying. It's not just movies. TV's dying, music's dying, it's all dying.
Well, do you think it is? I mean, I'm just saying there's great movies and things being made on TV that everyone cares about. And I kind of think that the Oscars should take over streaming. They should knock the Emmys out of the way and the Golden Globe and say, hey, we're gonna talk movies, but also the best TV streaming shows, and just record the super high-end shows. I think that would revivify it.
I'm not saying that the quality's dying. I'm saying that the business models are dying. Like, streaming is a few steps behind commercial TV. Like, streaming's got a lot longer to go than commercial TV does. But commercial TV, I can tell you, I'm pretty aware of commercial TV. It is dying in the ass. Like, the advertising is gone. And it's just, the whole economic model is just dying. The whole economic model of the music industry is just dying. The whole economic model, like, streaming is as I said, it's a few years behind, maybe a decade behind, but the whole entertainment industry is going, like, I'm not saying that in 50 years' time, people aren't going to watch things. What I'm just saying is the mediums are going to be different. Like the movies, the TVs, the music, all the things that we use to entertain ourselves, there'll be something else. There'll be something else which might be exactly like TV or movies in a different form. Or it might have elements of TV and movies, but in a different form. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I'm not making any predictions. I'm just saying that we are in a period of transition where everything that, all the tent poles we grew up with, that we cherish so much, are just gone. And my kids, they don't observe any of those tent poles, and they have no replacement. A replacement will evolve. I have every confidence that a replacement will evolve. We just don't know what it is yet. And I look forward to it because I really like being entertained by media. So I want something else to come along, whatever it is. And whatever it is, I'll jump on board, probably with a 12-hour version of it, whatever it is.
Yeah, you're really right. It is. And the pace of change is really changing. But now at least there is really creative video out there. It's sure. Don't go see it. We just don't pay $25 and sit in the theater with people who are texting next to us, and where we have to watch 8 minutes of commercials before even you start. So
totally. And by the way, when I say all this is all dying, I'm not saying that negatively. Like, it's creative destruction. That whatever comes after it may be fantastic. It may be way better. I'm not doing this, the kids of today are shit. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that we are in a transitional period. Everything we know is going, and it's going to be replaced by something else. And I can't wait for whatever that is. But anyway, Bill, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me here on PEP 200. Against all the odds, the guides really were pissing on us this week. And I really appreciate you standing soaked in urine next to me. Thank you very much, Bill.
Well, listen, and congratulations on 200. It's really an extraordinary show, and you've done a good job. So
thank you very much for your contribution.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. Stay peppy, Bill.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
And we'll see you after the white flash. Thank you so much to Bill Wyman. As you could see, he was under duress there. The sound wasn't working terribly well. I'm not going to give away any of his private business, but Bill's had a few things go wrong for him in the last week or so. Mm-hmm. And the around the house and stuff, and it's really good of him to do this. So I really thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
And I'm not going to laugh. Really good luck, Richie, in the hospital. I almost did laugh.
You're smiling.
But okay, so I want to play
Stats Nugget.
a Stats Nugget, and then I've got one absolutely beauty of a section for you for PEP 200. I've been saving this, and if we have time, a second treat of just how bad my crypto preparation is. I really did my best, and then Trump just changed everything.
PEP 200 is a wonderful montage of Pep's highs and lows all in one 4-hour episode.
It really is. Well, we'll see how much time we got, how we're going for time after I finish the real treat, and we might just turf the crypto section. Okay. See how we go. Stats Nugget. This is about education. Now, Trump overnight announced an intention to end the Federal Department of Education. I'm not going to talk about it now. We might talk about it next PEP. We'll see. By the way, there will be no PEP this week. No PEP. Okay, so we're going to run this a little bit long for that reason.
Sure. Cool.
Okay. I couldn't get an interview together in time. Sorry. I tried. The dude didn't even reply to me. The nerve!
What a jerk!
I thought they were a pepper. Anyway.
Well, that limits the pool of people down. It could have been Trump.
That's true. Anyway, Trump's been talking about getting rid of the Department of Education for some time. Like, for instance, in his first federal cabinet meeting a few weeks ago.
You go around Washington, you see all these buildings for the Department of Education. We want to move education back to the states where it belongs. Iowa should have education. Indiana should run their own education. You're going to see education go way up. Right now, we're ranked at the very bottom of the list, but we're at the top of the list in one thing, the cost per pupil. We spend more money per pupil than any other country in the world. And yet it's Denmark and Norway, Sweden, and I hate to say this, and you know, we're going to get along very well with China, but it's a competitor. They're at the top of the list. They're among the top 10 usually, and they're a very big country, so we can't use that as an excuse, right? Because we're a very big country too, but we were ranked last time under Biden. We were ranked 40 out of 40. They do the 40 certain nations that they've done for a long time. It seems to be 40 for whatever reason. And we were ranked number 40. A year ago we were 38, then we were 39. We hit 40. And so we're last in that, and we're first in cost per pupil. So I would say that's unacceptable.
I'm not being a smartass here. I don't know of any educational tests that have only 40 countries or exactly 40 countries. When he says, it's always out of 40 and we're 40 out of 40, I don't know what he's talking about. That doesn't mean that such a test does not exist.
Sure.
Because there are a lot of different tests out there.
Might have been a BuzzFeed one.
But I know it might have been. But I know of 3 different international education tests where they compare country rankings. None of them are out of 40.
Okay.
Right? But so maybe this is a Trumpism where he's just making some shit up. Maybe there's an actual test I don't know about that he's referring to. I don't know. So I'm going to be on the level on that one. Also, none of the 3 I know about have anything to do with China. China doesn't participate in any of them.
Oh.
Macau does, Hong Kong does, but not China. So once again, he might just be making up China, but I don't know of what test he's talking about there. Okay. Now, it sounds like I'm got my tongue in my cheek there. I don't, because this is one of those areas where there's always something you don't know about. You know, so I don't want to be a smart aleck when I don't know everything about educational testing. But I have looked and I haven't found anything. Okay, but I did get the data on the two major tests that are most often referred to when comparing educational outcomes, okay? They both put out public results comparing countries every few years. So why don't we look at those results for a stats nugget?
Oh, cute. Sure.
Yeah. So let's see if Trump's right based on the results of the 2 major tests. Definitely these are the ones that get quoted all the time.
Okay.
In the media. Number one is the PISA test, which is the Program for International Student Assessment Test. That was last undertaken in 2022. It's of 15-year-old students. They test reading literacy, maths literacy, science literacy. They also test financial literacy, but no one does that, so we won't bother about that one. America did okay with that, but no one gives a shit. All right, okay. All right. It's probably ironic that America does particularly on the financial literacy one. But anyway, let's go through the results of the main ones. Reading literacy. PISA's 15-year-olds here, okay? America is 9th in the world out of 80 educational systems. 80 countries participate in the PISA tests. All 3 of them are 80 countries. America 9th in the world. They got a score of 504. The OECD average is 476. So they did well over the OECD average. For those wondering, Norway 477, Sweden 487, Denmark 489. So America kicked their ass in reading literacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Number one. Number two, the maths literacy for 15-year-olds in the PISA test. America was 34th out of the 80 educational systems. Not so good.
Not as good.
They got 466. 465. The OECD average was 472. So below the OECD average. By the way, OECD is for those who don't know, is the developed countries. There's 34 of them. Okay. So when I say 80, that's the 80 countries in the world. The subset is the OECD. Okay, so when America's going below the OECD average, they're still doing better than the average of the 80 countries, but a lot of them are shittier countries than the OECD. Okay?
Well, tactfully put.
Yes. Well, when you're in Trump world now. So America got 465, OECD average 472, 34th in the world out of 80. Norway got 468, just above America. Sweden got 482, and Denmark got 489. So those 3 beat America there.
Yeah.
In the science literacy, America was 16th in the world out of 80. They got 499, OECD average 485, so they did better than the OECD average.
Sure.
Norway got 478, well below America. Sweden got 494, just below America. Denmark got 494, just below America. Okay, so there are your PISA tests.
Yeah.
Then we've got the trends in international mathematics and science study tests. They were the last conducted in 2023. They're the TIMS test. They test 4th graders and 8th graders in maths and science. 4th graders in maths, America came 28th in the world out of 63 systems. The average is 503. America got 517. So America was above the average.
Nice.
Denmark got 524, so that's above America. Sweden got 530, which is more above America. And Norway got 531, which is more above America.
Okay.
4th graders in science, America was 15th in the world out of 63 systems. They got 532. The average was 494. So America got well above the average. America got 532, remember? Denmark got 522, below America. Norway got 530, below America. Sweden got 533, just above America. In the 8th graders in maths, America was 24th in the world out of 45 systems. So just below the halfway point. 488 they got, but the average is 478. So actually the average was below them, even though they were more than halfway down the rankings.
Yeah.
Norway got 501 to America's 488, and Sweden got 517 to America's 488. So they got whipped by Norway and Sweden amongst the 8th graders in maths. And 8th graders in science, America was 16th in the world out of 45 systems. They got 513. Well above the 466 average.
Whoa.
Norway got 488, well below America, and Sweden got 521, just above America. So in summary, America does pretty well in science generally, does not so good in maths, does great in reading.
Yeah.
So there you go. I'm not like it's not like America's first.
No.
I just wanted to give you the actual numbers as opposed to Trump's bullshit.
They're a B student.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, totally. And
it's the thing that I have to tell myself.
And so while I don't know what tests Trump is referring to, I'm 100% confident that whatever he's talking about, 40 out of 40, like coming 40th out of 40, utter bullshit. There's no way that's the case. But maybe there is a test with China. maybe there's a test with other countries. But just when you look at those results, there's no way America's coming last in any test. They're at worst in the middle of the field.
Right.
And sometimes above Sweden, Norway, and Denmark.
Yeah.
By the way, when you look at those rankings, I won't put them at home because it's hard to navigate around them. Singapore is miles ahead of everyone.
Oh.
Singapore, my God, they must have a good education system. Like, whatever you talk about, reading, maths, science, 4th grade, 8th grade, it doesn't matter. Singapore's first every single time, sometimes by loads.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, they're doing well.
Nice. What about Trump's whole point, though, of we're spending the most per student? Is that...
I don't know if that's true. America's definitely
Sure.
up there. Definitely up there for spending the most.
Sure.
I don't know if it's actually spending literally the most. I think you need to compare currencies and the purchasing power and stuff. Like it's a little bit of a grey area, but they're definitely spending a lot.
Okay. It feels like when Australia goes, oh, we actually get the most gold medals when you measure per capita.
Yeah.
Pretty good for a country of our size.
Yeah. Look, I don't know the ins and like I'm not saying America can't improve their education system, Jesus, but I'm just saying
Singapore can't.
Singapore can't. So Singapore definitely can't. I'm just saying that that Trump is definitely exaggerating on how bad the education system is. Now, to the section which I've been teasing so much. Right, I've been talking about how terrible the Department of Justice is. I've got a little intro to this, but then I've got the main course. All right, so first of all, he's got a little bit more evidence that the Trump's Department of Justice is appalling. I think they are becoming my most hated part of the new administration. Even more than Doge.
ICE? Huh?
Even more. Oh, I don't hate ICE as much as I hate Doge.
No.
I mean, I disagree with what ICE are doing.
Yes.
But I don't hate them, whereas I really have no time for Doge
or Dodge
and Dodge. Yeah, maybe it's DO. Maybe I hate those. Watch out, reindeer. I'm gonna kill your women. I don't like those. And in Sound of Music, oh, I'm ropeable. The beginning of every song. Okay,
that was fantastic. Thank you.
All right, but anyway, I really don't like the DOJ at the moment at all. And just my palate cleanser. We heard about a guy called Edward Kelly recently. He was pardoned after assaulting police on January 6th.
An Ed Kelly assaulting police.
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
Very good. Very good. That's sharp.
Nowhere near as good as Doe.
But he was also hoping to overturn a conviction for conspiring to murder FBI agents who investigated him. You see, he allegedly planned to use drones to bomb the FBI branch in Tennessee.
Bold.
Nasty dude.
Yeah,
nasty
wow.
dude. Even though that conspiring didn't occur on January 6th, it happened because of the events of January 6th, right?
Ah, okay.
So he was hoping that the pardon for January 6th would cover that as well. So he was pardoned for assaulting police on January 6th.
Yeah.
He then conspired to murder FBI agents as a result of the investigations of him for January 6th. And he said, well, if I'm pardoned for January 6th, without January 6th, they're not investigating me and I'm not trying to kill them. So I should be pardoned for trying to kill them, yeah?
That's airtight.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. No qualms whatsoever.
His lawyer said, in this instance, there can be no dispute that Kelly's case in this court is related to the events of January 6th and therefore is covered by the president's executive action.
Well, of course, that's what you'd say if you're his lawyer. Yeah.
There's a bit of Dennis Denuto about this lawyer, I feel. But anyway, for those who've got no idea what I'm talking about, especially if you're overseas, look up The Castle.
It's just the vibe of the thing.
It's a movie, an Australian movie. But he's not the only one trying for this defence. David Daniel is facing child porn charges at the moment. And he says pretty much all of the evidence of the child porn crimes came from his house being raided because he was involved in January 6th. So his lawyer says anything that flowed from that case given the pardon, should be excluded and inadmissible at trial. Once again, the child porn has nothing to do with January 6. But when they raided his house because of January 6, they found the child porn. So he wants to get off the child porn charges.
That's fucked.
Yeah. So just hold that thought, Lockie, for 2 more lines. Guess what? The Department of Justice has confirmed that in their view, Trump's clemency for January 6 rioters covers all unrelated crimes that were discovered during FBI searches stemming from the attack on the Capitol.
So Trump's is any Democrat going to talk about the fact that Trump's pardon is pardoning child pedophile? Like, we're going to...
Let's find out, shall we?
Please.
Oh, you're not gonna find out now. I'm saying over
the next 10 years, probably.
Look, I don't think either of these guys have gotten off yet, but they're going to. They are going to. Well, actually, no, I shouldn't say they're going to because a judge might not let it happen. The DOJ, they presented their position to a court, seeking to drop guns charges against 2 January 6s because the guns were found during a January 6 related trial. Exactly the same situation as the child porn person, right?
Yeah.
So first we'll see if they get off. If they get off, the child porn person's going to use them as precedent.
Yeah.
And then will they get off? We'll find out. Maybe some judge might get ornery and go, what?
Yeah.
And then maybe the assassinating the FBI agents guy might get off. Well, we'll find out.
Oh, sorry for all that tax fraud I did. You only found out about it because of Jan 6. So technically, it's fine. That's such a...
We will find out.
Okay, I'm getting why you hate it.
Yeah. So this is just yet another example of why I hate the Department of Justice. They're trying this shit on. We'll see if it works. We'll see if the judges allow it. We don't know yet, but the DOJ has now stated their position that pedophiles should get off their charges if the evidence for their crime was gathered because they happen to also be a rioter on January 6. Like I keep saying, the Department of Justice under Trump sucks. Now we get to the main course.
Can I just jump in and say, there's a phrase there that you should never say, which is pedophiles should get off.
That's true.
In any context.
That's a fair point.
Any context.
You still look outraged.
I'm mad. I don't like that. That's bad.
Every single week I'm bringing one of these at the moment. It's an absolute disaster zone what's going on with American law at the moment. And Doge and all this stuff. There's just...
I'm hating the Doge too, man.
Yeah. The Doge. Next week, you wait till you see what I bring about the reindeer next week. Oh, my God.
Doubling down.
I'll be ringing up on you.
Okay. That was a good palate cleansing pun. What else have you got for me?
Now we get to the main course. I want to introduce you to a friend of mine called Eagle Ed Martin Jr. You may not know Eagle Ed Martin Jr., even though I've referred to him a couple of times in passing. He hasn't been a star of this podcast. He's about to become a star. He is a star now, and I'm going to keep on referring to him because he occupies a very important position, and he is a very interesting cat. We have mentioned once or twice, he's the acting U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C. He was appointed as acting U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C. immediately after resigning as the president of the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. That's why I presume he's called Eagle Ed Martin Jr. The Eagles are a far-right anti-feminist activist group.
And he resigned because he had disagreements with their views.
Most definitely
nice.
not.
Okay.
Most definitely not. He resigned because he got the job as acting U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C. Now, he was, of course, mixed up with the Stop the Steal campaign in 2020 and 2021. And he was mixed up with January 6 as well, although he was not present in the Capitol on the day. He represented a number of them in court. And now he's been nominated for the position of U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. properly by Trump. So he could be the first U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. appointed in at least 50 years without any experience as a judge or a federal prosecutor. And that's important because what the U.S. Attorney, they're like the main prosecutor in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is a pretty busy district when it comes to court cases. So they're an important person. Anything involving the federal government involves the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. when it comes to prosecutions.
Who is now a known far-right anti-feminist.
Yeah, just wait, man. We're just getting started. This is the part of the roller coaster where we've strapped in and start going, and we're moving uphill a little bit before we start going downhill. Okay, that's where we're at. While he doesn't have a lot of experience as a prosecutor or a judge, don't worry. He's been racking up some real experience lately. Let's start off with when he first came to my attention. When he started tweeting out open letters to Elon Musk a few weeks back. You might recall Wired magazine identified some of the Doge programmers about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Elon was hell-bent on keeping their identity secret, even though they were supposedly public workers and there's no reason to keep their identity secret. But anyway, Martin sent Musk a letter, an open letter, on Twitter as acting U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., saying, I recognize that some of the staff at Doge have been targeted publicly. At this time, I ask that you utilize me and my staff to assist in protecting the Doge work and the Doge workers. Any threats, confrontations, or other actions in any way that impact their work may break numerous laws. Let me assure you of this. We will pursue any and all legal action against anyone who impedes your work or threatens your people. And yes, if you are looking at that tweet, his Twitter name is also Eagle Ed Martin. And no, I don't think he was ever a member of the 70s soft rock band, the Eagles, in case you're wondering. Okay, now that tweet there, a bit silly. To be clear, it's not against the law to identify public workers. That's not an attack. That wasn't a big deal, but it was just it showed his
allegiances.
His allegiances. Yeah. But then he had a follow-up email, open letter, which was tweeted out. If people are discovered to have broken the law or even acted simply unethically, we will investigate them and we will chase them to the end of the earth to hold them accountable. Now, do you see the bit about we will chase them to the end of the earth to hold them accountable is in bold.
Yeah,
that was really important to Eagle Ed Martin Jr.
That's really entertaining because just last night I watched the new Robert Pattinson film Mickey 17.
Yeah.
Spoilers. He leaves Earth because a loan shark says, "I'll chase you to the end of the earth."
Really?
Yeah. So he goes, "You won't find me off Earth," and that's how the movie starts.
Do you think that he would be a suitable U.S. Attorney for Washington D.C. This character?
The loan shark.
Yeah, I guess it would be the loan shark.
Yeah, he absolutely would, but I won't spoil the rest of the movie. Good fun. Go watch it.
He sounds like he's got the same amount of integrity as Eagle Ed Martin Jr. But anyway, my point is,
I'm going to say no because that would be defamatory. That character was a murderer.
Sure. Okay, fair enough. Okay, all right. I didn't know that. Okay, first of all, you'll note that the first email was at least threatening to chase people who've broken the law. In this case, he's explicitly saying he's going to pursue people who have merely acted unethically. He doesn't care if they've broken the law or not. As the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., he doesn't give a shit if they've broken the law. If they've merely acted unethically, he will pursue
very
them.
Dennis Tenuto. It's not the vibe.
That's right. That's right, exactly. And he will pursue them in bold to the end of the earth. So that's getting a little bit disturbing. He seems, to my untrained eye, to be wanting to intimidate people who are opposed to Elon Musk and Doge because, spoiler, that letter went to everyone. It was an open letter. So he obviously wants other people to see it.
Also, it'll intimidate people who don't like Elon Musk because if it's to the end of the earth, they're not going to Mars.
Exactly. Great call. Great call. They just can't win under this scenario. But then it got worse because he started something he called Operation Whirlwind, which he described as an initiative to hold accountable those who threaten workers, specifically our cops, our prosecutors, our Doge workers, the president, and all other government employees from threats against our nation. Strangely, the only public officials he seems concerned about so far are Republicans, but boy, is he concerned. he sent this letter to House Rep Robert Garcia, who is a Democrat, of course. At this time, I respectfully request that you clarify your comments from February 12, 2025. During a live interview with CNN, when asked how Democrats can stop Elon Musk, you spoke clearly. What the American public wants is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight. This is an actual fight for democracy. This sounds to some like a threat to Mr. Musk, an appointed representative of President Donald Trump, who you call a dick, and government staff who work for him. Their concerns have led to this inquiry. Now, just to be clear, I'm going to play you the video he's referring to. You decide for yourself. You be the judge whether this is a genuine, violent threat against Elon Musk and Doge. Play it, Lockie, then you tell me if it's a threat.
I want to hear why, but do you think that calling Elon Musk a dick is effective messaging for confronting what is a potentially irreversible transformation of the U.S. government?
Well, he is a dick. And I think that he's also harming the American public in an enormous way. And what I think is really important, and what the American public want, is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight. This is an actual fight for democracy, for the future of this country. And it's important to push back on the chairperson of this committee. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene talks about having decorum, about bipartisanship. This is the person that lies more than anybody else in the entire Congress.
So now, I played that long to the bit where he's talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene because I wanted you to see there was nothing else. I want you to see the full context.
Yeah.
There was nothing else. That is what this guy wanted to investigate, what you just saw. Did that seem like a real threat to you?
Oh, lock him up for life.
I should have given you a trigger warning before playing that vicious rhetoric. And by the way, it's rare that someone, a politician, will be on air calling someone a dick.
I'm sorry, have you seen the new WA premiere?
I know about this. A knob.
Yeah.
No,
Knob,
I know.
dick.
I know. You can show people that if you want. It's fine.
JD Vance is a
knob.
There we go.
Whoa.
Vicious. Eagle Ed Martin Jr. is coming for you, mate. Let me tell you.
Roger Cook.
Yeah. But my point is, it's very rare that you will see, to finish off the sentence, you were very quick there.
I'm sorry.
It's very rare that you will see a politician calling someone a dick on the news, and they are the one with the high moral ground. But in this case with Eagle Ed Martin, yes, Robert Garcia has the high moral ground because there's obviously not a legitimate investigation, right?
Roger Cook does not, though.
No, he's
from WA.
He's going down. But it gets better because Operation Whirlwind continues. Then Martin sent a letter to Chuck Schumer because on March the 4th, 2020, Chuck Schumer said this on the steps of the Supreme Court.
They're taking away fundamental rights. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. The bottom line is very simple. We will stand with the American people. We will stand with American women. We will tell President Trump and Senate Republicans who have stacked the court with right-wing ideologues that you're going to be gone in November and you will never be able to do what you're trying to do now, ever again.
That was very vague at the end there. Look, once again, I played it long so you could see the full context of these vicious threats. Now that was
They're animals.
That, by the way, was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's 2020. It's 5 years ago. And yes, Schumer, like Robert Garcia, is a massive goose. Yes. But Schumer actually apologized for those remarks the next day on the Senate floor. Next day, he said, I should not have used the words I used. My point was there would be political consequences. No kidding. But this is what Martin wrote to Schumer 5 years later, and then, of course, posted on Twitter. At this time, I respectfully request that you clarify your comments from March 4, 2020. Your comments were at a private rally off the campus of the US Capitol. You made them clearly and in a way that many found threatening. Your exact words were, I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you'll pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. We take threats against public officials very seriously. I look forward to your cooperation with my letter of inquiry after request. That's why I think it's called Operation Whirlwind, because he said you release a whirlwind. Okay, that was the first letter. Schumer completely ignored him, so he kept writing letters. In the second letter, 2 weeks later, he asserted that any reasonable person would regard Schumer's words as threatening, even inciting violence. Any reasonable person, Lockie. You're a reasonable person.
And you know I'm a big fan of reasonable $20 billion decisions, yes.
Yeah. Did you think he was inciting violence there?
Oh, again, lock him up. He's gone. No chance.
You are a reasonable person.
No parole.
My favourite bit was in his third letter, because he kept on going.
Yeah.
When he wrote, time is of the essence. You have now received 3 letters as well as public discussion. Your cooperation is more important than ever to complete this inquiry before any action is taken.
How many years
5.
was it?
5. Time is of the essence, he says, 5 years later, about remarks that were clarified the day after they occurred. Time is of the essence. This is what FIRE wrote about those letters. FIRE is my favourite group. I love FIRE. That's the foundation for, I should look that up, I always forget, individual rights and expression. Yeah. This is what they wrote about those letters. It's not a close call. Neither statement meets the definition of a true threat. Each is core political speech, fully protected by the First Amendment. Schumer's remark is plain old political hyperbole. Sure, sane justices will pay the price and won't know what hit them. As a result, their decisions might be described by some as intemperate. The statement drew criticism from other members of Congress and even condemnation from the bench. Chief Justice John Roberts chastised Schumer for the tenor of his remarks, and Schumer in turn apologised. But in no way was it a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence to a particular individual or group of individuals, let alone grounds for a federal investigation nearly 5 years after the fact. The First Amendment also protects Garcia's political rhetoric. And again, it's not a close call. Garcia's comparison to the current political moment to a bar fight requiring actual weapons for an actual fight for democracy is plainly metaphorical, not literal. This is especially clear from the context of Garcia's remarks made during a CNN interview about politics. No reasonable listener could conclude Garcia was donning brass knuckles and seriously expressing over CNN's airwaves an intent to beat up Elon Musk. Simply put, there's nothing to investigate. Now, I know liberals have made similar arguments about Trump when he uses the word fight.
Yes.
Fight. Yeah, fight. When he on January 6th, they point to him saying fight.
Yeah, I remember.
But those people, number one, aren't US attorneys threatening legal investigations. And number two, they're not saying that when Trump simply said the word fight and nothing else. There's usually a context. Like, it's fight and the rest. And even then I criticize them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm being consistent here, okay? At the time, I was saying this fight shit with Trump is weak sauce. Right? But there was other stuff. Here, he's got nothing but fight, right? And I should note, a month later, after all these emails were sent out, these letters were sent out, Martin did actually drop the investigation against Schumer.
Yeah.
On the day that the statute of limitations ran out. Because it's 5 years. On the day, the exact day, that's when he dropped it, when he basically ran out of time.
What a cock.
Until then, he was happy to string it out and just keep on sending more letters. Yeah. But he said on the day the statute of limitations ran out that he felt Schumer's remarks fell short of a prosecutable true threat. Duh, Ed.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does Ed...
Yep.
And I'll preface...
Eagle to his friends.
Eagle. I was listening to a podcast where comedian Sammy Shah talked about how when he was growing up he noticed that certain types of politicians really just don't have any capacity for understanding metaphor or non-literal language. Does Ed Eagle Martin not understand this language, or is he trying to do whatever he can to play dirty and get these people to have some sort of ramification?
Eagle seems to understand this language when it's coming from a Republican.
Okay.
He just doesn't understand this language when it's coming from a Democrat.
Right.
Remember what I just said about the last time we heard people going on about fight was January 6th.
Yes.
Do you remember what Eagle had to do with January 6th? He was out there defending the actual rioters and supporting Trump.
If anything, that makes me think he really, really doesn't understand non-literal language because he was fighting.
He thought it was a fight. Yeah, no. I think he understands.
He can?
I think he is a hack's hack.
Yeah.
And I have plenty of more evidence because there are more phony investigations ahead. You might recall last week Trump said he would strip. Remember, this guy is the guy in charge of prosecutions in Washington, D.C. Last week, Trump said he would strip security clearances from the lawyers who worked pro bono to defend Jack Smith. Jack Smith was sued by some of Trump's allies.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of bullshit legal actions. They're not going anywhere. And the firm Covington and Burling waived $140,000 in fees to help defend Smith. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing illegal about that. There's nothing dodgy about that. In fact, it's admirable to defend people for free. Trump didn't like it. So he got revenge on them by removing all their security clearances and instructing agency chiefs to cancel any legal work that the firm might have on behalf of the government. Now, I don't know if they had any federal government work, but it's pretty scary to me that Trump is trying to intimidate people simply for helping his enemies.
You've said vengeful before. Yeah. It's quite vengeful.
In my view, that is more corrupt than anything Richard Nixon ever did. Richard Nixon never tried to take out the people who are helping his enemies.
Yeah.
That's Kevin Bacon shit. That's like one or two steps removed. Right? And honestly, in a just system, that kind of activity would be impeachable behavior. Like vengeance on the people who help your enemies, abusing your power to take vengeance on them. I'll tell you who disagrees with me, though. Eagle Ed Martin disagrees with me because he tweeted in response to that story that I just told you about, "Save your receipts, Smith and Covington. We'll be in touch soon." Hashtag no one is above the law. Well, I hope no one's above being disbarred, Eagle. Because that's not the tweet of a lawyer. That's the tweet of a henchman.
Although he has used his U.S. attorney Twitter profile instead of Eagle.
Well, this is the other
Ed
thing.
Martin.
The guy has unlimited Twitter accounts. He's got Eagle Ed Martin. He's got USA Ed Martin. He's also got the U.S. Washington, D.C. attorney account, which we're going to see soon as well.
Oh, great.
So, so you can get Eagle, not just in stereo, but you can get him in tripio, I don't know. in quadraphonic sound, in quadraphonic tweet, -1.
5.2 Dolby Digital Surround.
Anyway, it goes on. This guy, I'll remind you again, is the DOJ's chief representative in Washington, D.C., and he could not be more of a partisan hack. Oh, wait, he could. Because then, last week, he tweeted out on the official U.S. Attorney's DC's account. There we go, USAO DC, in case you're interested. USAO_DC, if you want to follow Eagle. He tweeted out on their official account this quote: "As President Trump's lawyers, we are proud to fight to protect his leadership as our president. And we are vigilant in standing against entities like the AP that refuse to put America first." Okay. I'm going to read that again bit by bit.
Thank you.
As President Trump's lawyers. Okay, first of all, he is not President Trump's lawyer. He's America's lawyer. And he's representing Washington, D.C.
President Trump's lawyer is Pam Bondi.
She's not meant to be either. President Trump's meant to have private lawyers. Yeah. but I know you're joking, but just be clear to people.
I'm glad you know I'm joking.
Yeah. But just to be clear to people, because sometimes it's easy to forget where we are at the moment. He's explicitly violating his oath of office with those first words, right? By declaring fealty to Trump instead of the country and the Constitution. All right, so as President Trump's lawyers, we are proud to fight to protect his leadership. His job is not to protect Trump's leadership as our president, he says. It is to enforce the law. That's his job. That's another violation of his oath of office. He swears an oath to uphold the law, not to protect Trump's leadership as our president. As President Trump's lawyers, we are proud to fight to protect his leadership as our president, and we are vigilant in standing against entities like the AP.
Associated Press?
The Associated Press. Standing against entities like the AP. He's talking about the Gulf of Mexico controversy there.
Yes, okay.
He's talking about the fact that the AP, the Associated Press, refers to the Gulf of Mexico. Sorry, it refers to the Gulf of Mexico as Gulf of Mexico, not Gulf of America.
You're next.
Yeah. It seems I am next. Eagles got me in his sights. It is AP's First Amendment right to call the Gulf of Mexico whatever they want. Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, it doesn't matter. So he's declared that he is vigilant in standing against people clearly practicing their First Amendment rights. That is also a violation of his oath of office. Fourth, so I'll read it again. As President Trump's lawyers, we are proud to fight to protect his leadership as our president, and we are vigilant in standing against entities like the AP that refuse to put America first. He's standing against them because they refuse to put America first. It's not against the law to put America second.
I thought I was supposed to put my family first.
If you're a Christian vote in Australia, you're meant to. But
yeah, right. Sorry.
It's wrong country. but regardless, it's not against the law, Ed. Leaving aside that using the phrase Gulf of Mexico has nothing to do with putting America first or last.
It's technically third word in that phrase.
That is true.
Yeah.
It's within the law, mate. So he should not be standing against that as U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. So that, by my count, is 4 violations of your oath of office in one sentence. That's not bad, is it? That's a great effort. If America wasn't completely screwed, that guy would be impeached if he had the role. 4 violations of oath of office in one sentence. By the way, he hasn't been confirmed yet.
Oh, great.
I can't wait for this confirmation hearing.
Yeah.
If ever there is going to be a hack test, this is going to be it. There is no way this guy should be confirmed. I really want to see this hearing. A few more random Martinisms, or as Lockie has just typed into my notes here, martinis. Nice one, Lockie.
Cheers.
A few more notable Ed Martin decisions before I get to the best one. Remember how a few weeks back I told you about how the head of the U.S. Attorney's Office Criminal Division, Denise Chung, resigned? Mm-hmm. Do you remember I mentioned how the EPA was sus about $20 billion that had been set aside by the Biden EPA for contractors, one of whom was linked to Georgia Democrat Stacey Abrams? They were rightly concerned, in my view, about potential favours for mates with that money. Mm-hmm. But the DOJ had been pressuring Denise Chung to launch an investigation and to seize the assets of one particular person associated with the EPA, who may have been involved in that process, it wasn't sure, simply based on a Project Veritas video. Yeah. And I explained at the time, Project Veritas is a notoriously dodgy partisan organisation. They run honeypot stings against people. They get people drunk on dates. They then bait their ego. They entrap them to talk about their job, and they ask them pointed questions, and then they record those people boasting while trying to have sex on a date. That's what's happening, right?
Which is why it always pays to be self-deprecating.
Exactly. They also have a track record of misrepresenting people in those videos and taking them out of context. Amazingly, Denise Chung felt that one of their YouTube videos wasn't sufficient evidence to legally harass someone and seize their assets. So the DOJ pressured her to resign. And that pressure, of course, came from Eagle Ed Martin Jr. He was the one that got her to resign, it turns out. And by the way, the guy that Martin wanted investigated and harassed and his assets seized, he maintains he had absolutely nothing to do with that EPA money at all that was dispersed. So he may have been a completely innocent victim in all this.
Sure.
Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he's lying. Maybe Ed Martin's got his number. We'll see. Also, remember how the FBI a few weeks back was trying to find out all the people involved with the January 6th investigation, and there were concerns that these FBI agents might get sacked?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, yeah. They weren't sacked.
Okay.
That's nice. But then Eagle Ed Martin Jr. decided to demote a whole bunch of senior supervisors in the Washington, D.C. Bureau who were involved in those January 6 cases. They weren't partisans. They weren't people accused of any wrongdoing by any side. They were just people who were assigned to work on January 6 cases, and he busted them all down to entry-level positions. He says it wasn't retribution. He says, quote, "As you know, each U.S. attorney must assess the needs of his office to achieve the goals set forth by the President and Attorney General. To that end, I must assign attorneys where I assess there is need and where I believe each can contribute." Sure, Ed. Nothing political about those demotions, and only those demotions. They were the only ones who were demoted, these January 6 people. Anyway, now we get to the dessert part of the main course. This is the pièce de résistance of Eagle Ed Martin Jr.
Yum, yum.
A few weeks ago, Wednesday, 19th of February, a Republican House rep from Florida, Corey Mills, was involved in a police incident with a 27-year-old woman who was not his wife, hint, hint, and it was an immediate scandal.
Mills is accused of assaulting a 27-year-old woman in an apartment in Southwest D.C. He denies any wrongdoing.
Not only that, but the Metropolitan Police Department also is investigating its own handling of this alleged incident.
The unnamed woman had called the police and filed a report. And I'm going to let NBC News 4 from Washington take over from here.
The report said the unnamed subject, now identified by D.C. police as Representative Corey Mills from Florida, grabbed her, shoved her, and pushed her out the door. It notes the officer saw bruises on both arms, one fresh, the other older, both the alleged victim said caused by Mills. It goes on to say the responding officer, who has not responded to News 4's calls, heard Mills on the phone instruct her to lie about the origin of the bruises, and that Mills made contact with the police and admitted the situation escalated from verbal to physical, but it was severe enough to create bruising. When told Mills would be placed under arrest, the report says the alleged victim recanted details, including the origin of her injuries, despite a D.C. law saying officers shall arrest a suspect when they see evidence of injury, even just pain. No arrest was made. The report notes a D.C. police lieutenant ordered that probable cause did not exist for an arrest. That version of the report is no longer public, but sources tell us very much a part of a D.C. police internal affairs investigation into why no arrest was made. We obtained two other versions of police reports. The second report, obtained the day after the alleged incident, removes almost all the details, saying only police responded to a family disturbance and no probable cause was found. A third version, obtained Thursday night, calls it an assault under investigation.
Okay, so that's all pretty sus.
Quite.
Yeah, you got more than enough evidence from the first report to arrest this guy. In fact, they're obligated to arrest this guy from the sounds of things.
Yeah.
The report disappears and is replaced eventually by a report that says nothing. To be clear, though, a DC lieutenant did say they felt probable cause did not exist for an arrest. And the woman, who remember was the one who called the police originally, did retract her allegations. What the news said there was true. She said that she made the call, the police call, in a state of being severely jet lagged and sleep deprived. And there was, in fact, no physical altercation. She told News 4 that her bruises were, quote, from medical conditions and activities from an overseas trip. Maybe she went paintballing. Now, that is obviously very sus, and I obviously have my extreme doubts about all that. It's currently being internally investigated, so we'll see what happens. Right. But why am I telling you this during a section about Eagle Ed Martin Jr.?
I was wondering.
It's because this happened in Washington, D.C.
It's his playground.
Exactly. He's in charge of prosecutions in Washington, D.C. There's no district attorney. They don't have one of them in Washington, D.C. It's just the U.S. attorney. A week later, it comes out that a warrant for Mills' arrest, despite those reports disappearing, was sent to the U.S. attorney's office for him to sign off on the Friday. So to be clear, that's after the second police report was released and the same day as the third police report. So despite all this messing around police reports, they still decided to arrest Corey Mills.
Yeah.
And they sent the warrant for the arrest to Eagle.
To the Eagle Nest.
To the Eagle Nest for him to approve with his talons, to scratch a little X. And surprise, surprise, that warrant was not signed by the U.S. attorney. Now, maybe the police are the problem here somehow. I don't know how, but maybe they are. Maybe Ed Martin is just exhibiting that trademark Martin knee-jerk partisanship. He just is never going to prosecute Republicans. Or maybe Martin is fully aware that the Republicans can only afford to lose one House Republican vote right now.
Oh.
And that one is going to be Thomas Massey. We've told you about him plenty of times. He ain't ever voting for the Republicans' mediocre bills, I promise you. They are so stretched for numbers that they're refusing to confirm Elise Stefanik until some of their other nominees have been replaced by special elections. So she's meant to be the UN ambassador, and they're just refusing to confirm her. So she stays in the House until there's a couple more Republicans. I think there's one or two more Republicans who have been appointed to positions for Trump, and so there's special elections that they're waiting for.
Sure.
Right? That's how much they're hard up for numbers. So maybe Ed Martin knows the House Republicans can't afford to lose Corey Mills, and he's going to do anything he can to stop Mills being charged and convicted to give Trump's tax cut some chance of passing through. And when I say anything he can is everything.
Yeah.
Because he's the guy who decides who's charged in Washington, D.C. So we have that case of, I'm going to say it, clear domestic violence going unprosecuted because Ed Martin is such a massive fucking hack. So, in conclusion, I cannot believe how awful this man is. He could be the worst person in the DOJ, and that includes the new deputy head of the FBI, YouTuber Dan Bongino, who's been known to wear Liberal Tears t-shirts. You remember how last year, you got to set your mind back a bit here. Lockie will remember this. I was jousting with commenters on the ABC YouTube site under Planet America videos about the fact that I was saying that Trump was just not going to be sending the army on Adam Schiff. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember those nights.
And people were saying how biased I was against Trump.
I remember those drafted messages on Facebook.
Yes. How biased I was for Trump. I was so pro-Trump because I didn't think he was going to set the army on Adam Schiff.
Did they call you Trump Lichadello?
They called me many things.
I think it's something lame like that.
Many things. And look, at the time I said the thing I was actually worried about was not a cruise missile hitting Adam Schiff. The thing I was worried about was the politicization of the bureaucracy and law enforcement. Ed Martin was exactly my nightmare. And now the man is here. And he's going to haunt me for 4 bloody years. And he's just going to get worse. He's only just started. He hasn't even been confirmed yet. And he's like this. Imagine when he has the security of being confirmed. Once again, you can clip it out. I am going to be watching that hearing. I want to see who asks him a question about any of this shit. By the way, there's more. I just didn't want this to go for 4 hours by itself, the Ed Martin section. So, in summary, the DOJ sucks. It really, really sucks. Now, we've been going for 2 hours here.
We're at the
Lucky.
4 hour mark.
We are pretty much at the 4 hour mark.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do the crypto section. This is long enough.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah. Now, Lucky would like to not leave here tomorrow morning. And, so I tell you what, we'll leave the crypto section. That Dave might have something to say about. We had a correspondent who really doesn't like Dave's crypto analysis. He finds Dave extremely biased against crypto. Richie was going to do it. He specifically asked for Richie to do it. Richie was going to do it, but once again, Richie's in hospital. Richie's in hospital. So I tried my best.
You did.
I really did. And then I tried to research it myself, and then Trump screwed me after I'd done the research. Anyway, we may or may not talk about crypto next week. Maybe I'll do it in the next PEP. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Anyway, we'll leave that for now. I'll leave you with dreams of the eagle. And until next week, when Dave's back, when we're going to use all our decorations from PEP 200 for PEP 201, it's going to be a doozy. Until then, stay peppy.
Happy 200.